So while you're there, behind you, just turn the little dial on the left to the right as much as you can.
The dial on the left to the right as much as I can.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yikes.
Big jump?
Yep, good. I'm blind, but it's okay.
All right, now, the other thing we needed to do, you said something, adjusting the audio, the
Headphones.
Because you're going deaf in your old age.
Well, I just like to hear crisp sound. I don't like to be like...
She likes to hear the sound of my voice.
If you just knock that water over one more time, my God, I'm going to lose my noodle.
Okay, so if I crank this up...
That's much better, thank you.
Okay, all right.
That's better.
We good now?
Okay, that's a little bit too loud.
Picky.
There we go.
Okay, well,
Perfect.
All right. You're going to have to learn how to drive that thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Carly went and spent more money. I have been telling her for months to just stop spending money. We're supposed to be apparently, according to our trolls, we are grifters. We're supposed to be making money off this.
I haven't made
And
$10.
you're spending about 10 times more than what you could possibly get.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, are we doing good news?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to
Good
take
news.
over your podcast. Good news. I think this week we're going to hit the 1,000 subscriber
I
mark.
think we're pretty close. Let's have a look.
Yeah.
We are super close. We're at 953.
953. All right, so we need another 47 people to get on board the Oddcast train.
Now.
So if you are not a subscriber, you need to become one and get on board the Oddcast train. Look, you can get on board before it's cool. This is your opportunity to
be like,
be
I've been
ahead
there
of the
since
game.
day one.
Oh, yeah.
People love that flex. I've been there since day one. OG.
I've always been mystified by this idea that bands are good until they become popular. Oh, they become mainstream. It's like, you mean they were successful?
You mean they actually finally started to make some money after the thing they've been doing for free for forever?
Or the other one I love is, oh, no, I knew this, let's say basketball or sports, but I knew him when he was a kid. He was really awesome. And then he got all commercial and it was all about the gym and the protein and the sponsors. You mean about a career?
It became successful.
Yeah, and becoming actually elite. You just wanted him to remain the skinny kid in the local basketball court and never go anywhere.
That is quintessential Australian behaviour, though. We love the underdog until they start to do better than us, and then it's like, oh, you've changed. That is my favourite sentiment. We'll get it with this. Oh, you've changed.
So what you're saying is everyone who's currently a subscriber is going to turn on us one day.
I hope not. But I'm sure there'll be a handful. Oh, she's a sellout now. She used to be good.
Used to be cool.
Oh, you used to do deep dives, and now everything is just like...
Oh, back when she was struggling. I just wanted to go back to struggling,
Well, this is the other thing too, and I don't know if this is an Australian thing or this is just a mediocre general population thing, but when you see people finally find their own trajectory forward, everyone thinks there's a recipe for success. There's not. It's you figuring out your own path. And once you figure out that secret sauce, it's yours and off you go, and then people try and mimic you and they always fall short. But when you do go through that horrible suck period, and it can go for years, and some people it can be decades, and then you finally make it out, then people go, oh, overnight success.
Oh, that's right. Well, see, I'm looking forward to becoming an overnight success because after 16 years, I think it's probably my turn. And you know that saying, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success?
Yeah.
I must be just a little bit dumb because it's taken me 16 years. So I'm just a bit behind the 8 ball, but I'm looking forward to catching
You've
up.
also set me up to fail because people are like, this inane Carls that you are associating with.
I know, right?
She doesn't know anything. And you're right, guys. I am not a political commentator, also not a journalist. And I'm going up against someone who knows policy and law inside out. So thank you for setting me up to fail.
That's very flattering, and you're overstating the case. But yes, I've been around the traps for 16 years. That gives me a certain amount of background knowledge, a comfort in front of cameras, and a level of debate that takes time to get. So give her a break, guys. just go easy. She's the comic relief. Can we just let Carls be Carls?
I'm the beauty of this podcast. You come here just to look at my pretty face.
Am I not pretty enough?
Dude, you've broken 6 cameras already.
Is my heart too broken? Do I cry too much?
Am I not pretty enough?
Am I too outspoken?
Am I too outspoken?
Okay. Whoa. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Do you remember when that song hit the charts?
It was all over the place.
Casey Chambers?
Why do you see right through me? Yeah.
No disrespect to Casey Chambers, but that song, it was like a cheese grater going down my nipples.
But... Wow.
You knew how that felt though, didn't you? That was visceral. You felt that.
When you warned me before this podcast that we are going to be getting into some freaky sex stuff, I thought you were talking about the Diddy trial.
No, this is just me and G Sunday nights.
Okay. I don't believe we've had your good. So actually, let me change my good news because it is good news that we're approaching 1,000 podcasts, 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube. But that's not what it's all about.
That's our good news.
That's our good news. That's right. So my good news actually is, I've moved out of Melbourne. I live up in Aubrey, and the rains have finally come. And I mean no disrespect to the people being flooded. That's a horrible, horrible situation. But further south from you, the drought has been crippling, and the rains have finally arrived. And in that part of the world, we've had beautiful soaking rains for a few steady nights in a row, and it's exactly what the farmers needed. And it's wonderful. You just see these little early shoots of green coming up out of the brown, and it feels amazing.
You know, we've talked about this ages ago, not on this podcast, but maybe you can refresh my memory. When there's that inability for some people to let other people feel joy when they're not feeling it themselves. And this is a very weird human experience where unless you're feeling the happiness, no one else is allowed to be happy.
I will step in and say, if your house is underwater, you're allowed to be a bit grumpy.
No. I'm just no. What I'm saying is, in the world of social media and the world of podcasting, you're not allowed to celebrate anything because someone else out there is doing it worse than you.
Well,
and you can acknowledge both.
This is where the sort of the competitive nature of virtue signaling, but also this idea of victimhood, where you want to be the peak victim, and therefore, that gives you the position of greatest power. And so psychologically it manifests in a lot of different ways. Have you ever met someone who just cannot bring themselves to be grateful? They can't say thank you.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because actually acknowledging that someone has done you a favor or done something nice for you gives them a level of power, gives them a level of status in your life that some people just they're not willing to give up.
Well, that, and I think also some people have made their victim status their personality.
Oh, yeah.
And letting go of that is terrifying. So even if they've got a leg up or things have gone a little bit better, it won't last.
Yeah.
They can't let go of that mindset.
Well, I'm not a farmer. I don't have any land. I have no skin in that particular game. But I love the fact that as I drove down to Melbourne today and looked around, I could see just the beginnings of the evidence of some green. The dams, which have been bone dry, were now soggy and muddy in the bottom, which is a huge improvement because it means that the ground is filling up with water. It's started to take
some water.
And now when actual rains come, we're going to begin to see some runoff, which in my part of the world is desperately needed.
Yeah, well, that's good news. Yeah. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
My good news is not something like that. I feel very... I feel bad now for not having more altruistic good news. My good news is that I have got my latest assignments from uni. They're all HDs.
Oh, good. Well done. Well done, you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All these people, it's just going to be so interesting for me to watch how people respond to you once you've got your master's. And I'm convinced you're going to do very, very well because you're the kind of person that goes hard and you're capable of it.
I know no chill.
Yeah, yes, it's a good way to put it. No chill. But also, watching your haters, because previously they've dismissed you as a know-nothing, as ignorant, as what would you know, you're a nobody, you've got no substance, all you've done is, graphic design, bachelor, whatever, sit down little girl, kind of attitude. Yeah. And then watching how they're going to spin it, because once you've got the masters, of course, they're not going to change their fundamental animosity towards you. They're not going to admit that they were wrong. They're going to have to find a way to spin that.
The horizon keeps shifting. This is what I find hilarious. And I mean, I do read the comments, and for the most part, there's some really great ones, and I've got some good ones to read at the end of the show, which I want to shout out the people who do leave great comments. Yeah. But whenever there's silly comments, I'm just like, I can't win with you people.
Yeah.
No amount of me bending into your whims will satisfy your rage.
Every now and again, you get an insult that is just so artful that you just have to tip your hat to it. So I did a podcast with the Unemployables last week, and that just got released yesterday. And
I hadn't seen it yet.
Someone made this comment in there, and I think they were being complimentary, but they were just observing that I talk way too fast. When I really get in the zone, I'm rattling.
Isn't that us Aussies in general, though? We do speak fast.
Probably. But his comment was, this guy just invented the flux capacitor. Which I just
that's great.
It's beautiful.
That's actually really good. I think that's a compliment.
And then my all-time favorite that I still think about, and it's got to be at least 10 or more years old now. I don't know when it was put up. But my all-time favourite insult from a troll was, this guy looks like he could gnaw through the walls of Parliament House because of my teeth. And it's just it's so beautiful because it's bespoke. It's political. It's Parliament House. It's a specific reference to a physical feature that I have.
I appreciate that.
Teeth. Edwina and I sat and laughed and laughed. It was so good. And I still think about it from time to time. And I think about it warmly. Like, I'm like, that
was a good one.
That's what a troll should be like.
I'd love something like that.
Yeah.
Go on, guys.
Yeah.
Don't do worse. I don't want to encourage you guys. What was I? Oh yeah, the master's thing. You know, it's interesting because my master's is in photography, but it's centered around AI. So by definition, when I get my little piece of paper, I will be an expert in AI, and I imagine it is still not big enough.
Yeah, the AI is one of those things that's going to be evolving so fast, though.
Yeah.
Because you're getting on early, you'll be able to keep up. But a lot of the people hating on you are going to be left behind, and it's just going to be kind of funny.
Just as a side tangent, so a big part, just to explain it to you guys, if you have only seen this part of the podcast. So my master's is centered around beauty standards, right? So we're talking about the fashion industry, the beauty industry. And my whole thesis, just to explain it for those who don't know, is about how AI is us. We are demonizing AI as this other entity. AI is us. It's always existed, and we are feeding AI our own fantasies and delusions. AI is trained off our fantasies and delusions.
Yeah.
So particularly in regards to beauty standards, we are training AI off all of these images that have been either digitally manipulated or airbrushed and retouched, thanks to commercial photographers like myself, but also all the filters and all the social media apps that are young girls and young women are using. And it's specifically around women, but I'm not saying that men don't do this. It's just this part of my research is around women. And so AI is learning that. And so the other day I've been learning all the different AIs like DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and obviously Midjourney. And my job is to sign up to them and play with them for 30 days and see what we get. And now I'm getting to the point where it's actually really hard to get those individualistic features from someone. I will ask AI, I'll prompt it, I'll give it ideas to do it, and it can't. And everything is homogenized, which is, everyone's like, oh, this is terrible. I'm like, well, no, it's homogenized because that is, like, what do you call it when you add everything up and then take the median out of it?
The average. So,
the average, yeah. So AI is just putting back to us what the average is.
And it's actually literally trained to do that. Take for example, linguistically, the words that AI allows itself to use in its responses, it has to choose words that it believes that humans are going to understand. It has a target for essentially understandability, in the ability to communicate to a wide enough audience. And so it won't use words that in its investigation of the internet have fallen below a certain percentage of use, which means that as soon as a word falls below a certain threshold, it drops off entirely because increasingly we're using AI to do our communicating. And correct. And here's the scary part. You cannot think about things you do not have words for. If you lose the word for something, you've actually lost the concept. The reason we invented the word was so that we could deal with and articulate and debate and think about that particular
Well, it's funny you're saying that because I'm saying that about facial features.
Right.
The marks of our individuality are being erased thanks to either the airbrushing and the retouching and the filters or cosmetic enhancement. So people are now deeming that freckles bad, depending which side of the fence you are. You always want what you don't have. Yeah, so if you have freckles, they're bad.
The fashion
if you don't
changes
want them,
really fast. Like I remember the tooth gap fashion that went on for a little while.
That was in the 2000s.
Yeah, it's like, all the models have to have this gap between the top two teeth, and then all of a sudden
Clem
the tooth
Ford
gap,
rode that wave.
The tooth gap went out of fashion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now are they all like going to their dentists and being like, can we just adjust my braces, please?
Well, this constant search for perfection, whatever that term is, obviously that's an arbitrary term because it changes depending on the trends.
Sure.
But now it's got to a point where there is a cosmetic procedure for everything. And it's basically eroding everything that makes us individual. But of course, we're not taking it away from our DNA. It still exists. It's just not aesthetic on our external body. But interestingly, I hate bringing up the Kardashians, but they are the ones who started this movement. Kris Jenner, she's the matriarch. She's just gone and got herself a facelift. And to be fair, she looks phenomenal. Like she was cut by the hand of God, right? Like it's phenomenal work.
Yeah.
But she now almost looks like her daughters who are, 30 years younger than her or even more. And I can't help but feel a sadness for this because Kris Jenner has had a life. I'm not saying I like her or don't like her, but she's erasing that life. Sure, she still has her memory, but I would argue, and I'm happy to get older because I feel like I've earned those lines. And I know some women will disagree with me, and it's interesting because part of my research is conducting this along regular people, and I've got a lot of big names in the industry that I've interviewed as well, and it's all done anonymously, unfortunately, because I'd love to tell you what some of these people think. But for example, one key person who I've interviewed recently, her whole stance is, I do it just to minimize me being objectified. This person's big in the media. You know exactly who this person is. And
so sorry, they're getting cosmetic procedures to make themselves look better by our modern standards to reduce the risk of being objectified.
Because she's like, no one takes me seriously because it's constant a discussion around my looks, what I'm wearing. I just want to satiate them so that then they can listen to me.
Move on beyond
now,
that.
you and I might look at that and go, that's the wrong way to do it. But this is the problem. This person's been in the media for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. They're trying to fix a genuine problem.
And that's how they see the resolution. And, it's really interesting research, and I won't bore you guys with it anymore, but, yeah.
Okay. Well, you got your most recent ones back, and you got HDs. Well done.
HDs. I have this, like, what do you call it? I'm a type A personality. We know this. But it has to be, like, the best.
You have to win.
I cannot settle for anything less.
Yeah.
I think it's because I have no sporting ability. So I can't be good at
this
sports.
Is where you compete.
This is my sport.
This is where you compete.
Yeah.
Well, look, I've got to say, I am not a particularly competitive person, but I do think I have not a perfectionist streak. That's massively overstating it. But I will feel, if I don't do well, I will feel way more disappointed in myself than anyone else will ever be.
You're your harshest critic.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
And that pushes me in good ways and in bad ways. And I've learned as I've hit my 40s to begin to channel that into some more constructive ways than what I think I did in my 30s and certainly in my 20s. And it can be a good thing to harness and spur you on. And now that, my YouTube channel's grown massively this year so far, and other things are starting to go well, I'm finding that that's kicking in a really positive way for me now. Whereas previously, when I felt like things weren't going well, it became a stick that I beat myself over the head with. So the type A personality, I don't know what I am. I don't care what I am. I am what I am. But in your case, yes, that kind of drive, it's a good thing when you're doing well, but I imagine it's a hard taskmaster when you're not.
I was going to say, as someone who is my elder, a generation above me. I like saying that because it's not that big an age gap, but a generation sounds like
that hurts.
Yeah. Ouch. Mm-hmm. So as my elder, I'm turning 40 next year. I'm genuinely excited for my 40s. Is that weird?
Not at all. I'm really enjoying my so my early 40s were still a bit rough, but I'm 43 now, and I'm if the rest of this year continues the way it started, I'm on track for my most enjoyable year of my life.
My 30s were the toughest. Like, I had great 20s. I traveled a lot, had a lot of fun, and that's when I started my first business and saw a lot of success really quickly. And as someone who's had that taste of success really quickly, they say youth is wasted on the young. Success is wasted on the young. Because, did I have a lot of fun. I traveled a lot. I did a lot of things, and I don't regret anything. I did the best as I could with what I knew, and, it is what it is. But in my 30s, as everyone knows, I went through a liquidation, then we had COVID, and then I got cancelled, and then
tough decade.
It was a tough decade, but weirdly, I'm really grateful for it because I feel like I've reached a new depth in my character and something that has humbled me. And I know people say this, but when I say humility, what I mean is like it evened the playing field for me. There was part of me that was still attached to my ego, as we are in our 20s.
We all are. Yep.
And then, when you kill off that ego and you have that massive ego death, you kind of go, well, shit, I've got nothing to fear anymore. I feel liberated.
Yeah, you're actually free.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very, very true. You speak of the difference between the generations. I'm going to be a little bit risque here. I was chatting with someone recently, and they said you can tell the difference instantly between a Gen X and a Gen Z based on the kind of a dick joke they give.
Oh.
When Gen X make a dick joke, it's about how big theirs is. When Gen Z make a dick joke, it's about how small theirs is. And I said, I think you're probably right. And when Gen Alpha make a dick joke, it's about how they used to have one. And that went down fairly well.
I actually disagree, though. Gen Z will be the one that make a joke about not used to having one. Gen Alpha might be super conservative.
So they're splitting.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Won't go through that again.
But anyway,
what are we talking about?
What are we talking about? I've thrown in a curveball because, much to the dismay of some of Topher's hardcore followers, we will talk about politics, but we're also talking about culture and...
We talk about all sorts of things.
We do.
And for the record... I really like you as a podcasting partner. I mean, I like you as well, but I specifically like you as a podcasting partner because you bring all the topics that I wouldn't normally talk about. And because it boosts my ego because I feel really intelligent. So it works at multiple levels. So all the people who are like, oh, you got to lose her. No. This is the point. I wouldn't be doing a podcast if it weren't for the fact that I'm doing it with you.
Well, there you go. See? Yeah. You do have some nasty pasties in your comment section.
Yeah, there's a few in there.
Yeah. But anyway, we don't care about them because we're on a podcast and you're not.
And here's the thing. You've proven yourself to me through those hard yards that you went through in your 30s. You've earned a level of respect. It's not on the same level, but I'm going to use the analogy of people that go through the trenches together. It's like we're going to still have our differences and all the rest of it, and there's probably going to be things you don't like about me and vice versa, but that actually pales into insignificance compared to the shared experience that we've got.
The character reveals itself through those hard times.
Yeah. So suck it up, princess. Watch or don't watch, but I'm podcasting with Carly.
And then one day in like years, like, I was OG. I used to watch the early episodes. I was there.
I was there specifically to hate on Carly, the most successful female.
Oh no, they won't say that. They're like, I've been their fans for years. I've been there since day one. Yeah. Okay, so this week's podcast topics. Aubrey Marcus, are you familiar with him?
Look, no. I'm going to say no because what little I know probably won't be accurate.
Okay, so Aubrey Marcus is a very successful podcaster. In the leagues of, your Joe Rogans and your Jordan Petersons.
Yep.
He and his wife have recently caused a massive storm on social media, referring to something called radical monogamy. We'll go into that. And I thought it was really interesting, not because I like talking about drama, more for what this is setting the tone for. There is a massive chasm as we've moved away from religion and it's been replaced by this spirituality.
Right.
And as someone who's dipped my toe in this and gone, this is a cult, I think it's really interesting to talk about. So we'll get into that.
I didn't know monogamy could be radical, but okay, we'll get there.
Well,
No,
I
don't want to done that. No,
okay.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Are you doing my job?
Oh, I'm like the bumpers on the lanes of the bowling alley. I've just got to kind of just
shut up.
Keep you inside the range,
All right, my favorite topic, something that just sounds like it never ends.
Oh no.
No, it's not. It's not that.
Oh.
Northland knife crime.
Oh, okay, yes. All right.
You thought I was going to say Body Blue.
I thought you were going to say OnlyFans and that you'd figured out how to monetize
Every
the podcast.
Episode. I've got to bring it up.
Can you blame me for thinking that that's where you were going?
Just like sliding it in there.
Can you blame me? Okay. Like a machete. Just slide it in there. Yes, we do need to talk about that because there's a lot of layers to it and it's pretty ridiculous.
And she was like, oh man, it's going to be another dark podcast, isn't it? I was like, no.
No, we can make it fun. We can talk about gleefully stabbing people.
Yeah. So we're going to bring some humor to it. Yeah. We're going to talk about the Diddy reckoning. Again, not to discuss the details of the case itself, but more so the untouchables and how they are falling from grace.
Well, are they?
Well, it's interesting. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Bumper.
This is a sad one, and I don't want to joke about this because this has happened to someone. But the young Aussie woman who has been jailed for setting her friend on fire.
Yeah, that's pretty
sinister.
Messed up. I'm assuming at this point that that's just straight up mental health, but I don't.
Well,
actually
drugs
know.
and alcohol as well.
Yeah.
We'll get into it. Sorry, stay on task. Goody. There's a new COVID strain.
I know. This is so exciting. I
didn't know we were still doing this.
I'm so glad we get to do this again. We go round and round the mulberry bush. No. This one. Oh, no. You don't understand, Carly. This time it's serious. Maybe it wasn't last time or the time before that or the other time 10, 15 times. But this one's serious, Carly.
You can tell these people would never read the bedtime story that, the boy who cried wolf.
Honestly, if our politicians and just our general public read and understood nursery rhymes and fairy tales at a deep level, most of the BS would disappear.
I am feeling fatigued from the stupidity.
Yep. So, there's that saying.
Exhausting.
There's that saying of, just imagine how dumb the average person is and then realize that half the population is dumber. Unfortunately, it seems as though idiocracy has kind of taken hold and the dumb ones have put themselves into a position of power and the rest of us are just having to sit there and go, okay.
If I was to put my tinfoil hat on, I would say this is all by design. I would say that AI is contributing to this in a new way. But prior to that, depending which rabbit hole you want to go down, we could talk about the poisoning of our food, the lack of nutrients in our soil. We could talk about fluoride. There's a lot of things. But at the risk of getting booted off YouTube, having just about to get monetized, we will play in the safe area.
Let's just put it down to those dastardly anti-vaxxers, and that way we'll be safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And yay, democracy.
Something. Yep. War is peace, and having no choice is democracy or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Elon has backed off from Doge.
Yes. Now, this is interesting. This is a molehill that a mountain is being made out of, but it is a good opportunity for us to reassess where Doge is at.
This isn't on here, but this just reminded me of another topic. Jake Tapper and his book tour around the Biden thing.
Yes.
I just want to talk about the hypocrisy in the media, but we'll add to that.
But also there's now other aides and staffers coming out. I think probably inspired by Jake and his monetization of his story. There's others coming out now, and you're like, at some point we have to ask ourselves whether you've actually committed crimes by hiding this from the public.
You would think so.
Yeah.
And certainly they have short-term memories, because Jake Tapper's like, I was, curious about this from day one. It's like, well, actually, no, you shamed Lara Trump for this.
Correct.
Anyway, bumpers. Back.
Bumper.
You've told me to put the Lib Nationals Coalition,
No. Listen. I allow you to bring up all your childhood.
All right, let's go into that first. Get it out of the way.
The little kiddie play culture stuff. Okay, let the adults speak for a minute. Okay?
All right, tell me more about the
serious.
Liberal National Coalition, because I care so much.
So I mean, what we've got is Anthony Albanese with a stranglehold on the country, and the argument is
he's got a mandate apparently.
Well, with the it's not a woman date. Don't misgender it. With the result that he got, the Liberal National Party parting ways and no longer being the coalition, he has won total victory. And it's now off into a bright red future, according to his sycophants in the media.
And the accelerationist in me is like, bring it on.
Yeah, except that that's simply not what's happening. 3 out of the 4 times that the Liberal National Party have gone into a period of being in opposition from having been in government, 3 out of the 4 times they've divided, they've split up. And then 2 out of those 3 times where they've split up, they've come back together, and the other one is the one that's happening right now. So
someone's just throwing their toys out of the cot.
Well, no, what it is them finding their identities again. And there's some healthy opportunities here. So I interviewed Senator Matt Canavan, thank you, about this specific, because I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth. No offense to Matt being a horse, but I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth. And the way that he explained it to me, and this gels with what I'm seeing elsewhere. So I do believe him when he says this. In this election, the Nationals Party made the mistake, in hindsight, of agreeing to go quiet. The argument was, if the Nationals Party make too much noise, we're going to lose too many inner city seats. The only way we're going to hold on to the inner city seats as a coalition, the Liberal Party are going to hold on to the inner city seats, is if the Nationals take a back seat this time around.
Yeah.
And so they agreed, and then, of course, there was an absolute shellacking, and it worked out as an absolute disaster. And so what Matt Canavan is contending is that the Nationals now need to get loud. Yeah. And they need to actually take a firm stance on what they believe. And the Liberal Party needs to decide, do we want to be with them or not?
Yeah.
But they're no longer going to compromise and be quiet.
Yeah, I
in
like
order
this.
to maintain. Correct. I think it's really healthy.
I call this growing a backbone.
Correct. And that's what appears to be happening. I was disappointed that David Littleproud won. So Senator Matt Canavan challenged him for the leadership of the Nationals Party, which is a little bit novel because Canavan being a senator, normally, you can't be a senator and be the Prime Minister. You have to come from the lower house. Now, when the LNP are in power, the leader of the Liberal Party is the Prime Minister and the leader of the Nationals is the Deputy Prime Minister. And having the leader of the Nationals, therefore, as a senator is a little bit odd. So I'm not quite sure the technicalities of how that would have to work, but in any case, David Littleproud, who is from the lower house, he won. But he and I have a lot of history.
Yes, we did discuss this.
I am not a fan of...
Did you see my thumbnail?
David Littlepeen, I believe,
was
the schoolyard jibe that you came up with.
Oh, that's some of my best work.
For the public record, Carly does our thumbnails. And I'm not talking about doing my thumbnails. I'm talking about doing the little pictures you see on the screen. And that one, I hesitated. I did go, do I ask Carly to change this? Because it is just a little bit juvenile. And then I went, yeah, but it is David Littleproud. So I was like, yeah, okay, fine.
Little thing. Some of my best work.
You're enjoying this way too much. So I have concerns around him being in the leadership of the Nationals Party. I would like to see him get rolled, and there is some pressure on for that to happen. I think if we go into the next election with Albo versus Susan Lee, with Little Proud as the leader of the Nationals Party in coalition or separate to the Liberals, that is not there is no good result. There is no good result. Even if Albo gets thrown out, there is no good result there. So I'm really hoping and watching that while they're in this period of separation, the Nationals Party are going to roll David Littleproud. We're going to see either Michael McCormack, who I've got no particular love for either, but he's less bad, or potentially Senator Matt Canavan come in, take the reins of the Nationals Party, and hopefully grow a spine, stand up against all the net zero nonsense, stand up for their regional constituents and the people that actually made them a great party in the first place. And it may be that they solve the conundrum of where should we be throwing our support.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to ask you.
Sure.
I'm just trying to remember them off the top of my head so I don't forget. What does this mean for Jacinta Price? But before we go into that, and then the Queensland Liberal leader who basically told the UN to get stuffed. And
David Crisafulli.
And what was the other thing? Oh, more redeeming. We'll get into that sec. So what does this Nationals, the disbanding of the coalition mean for someone like Jacinta Price?
So Jacinta Price has recently left the Country Liberal Party or the Nationals Party? She left the Nationals in Northern Territory. I think I got that wrong.
And she's a sitting senator.
She's a sitting senator and she's kept her seat. So some of the Senate seats have now been announced. She's kept her seat. So she can switch parties and she's done so. So she's now sitting in the Liberal Party, I believe.
Yes,
she's inside that tent.
Well, she was going to throw a hat in the ring.
She did as deputy to Angus Taylor, I think it was, when they challenged for the leadership of the party. Now, that to me was a tactical misstep. Jacinta Price is very popular with a certain demographic of voters, but it's not a large demographic of voters. I'm a fan of hers, just to be clear. I like her. I think she's great.
She is lovely.
Yeah, she's a lovely human being. I know her and her husband, Colin, reasonably well. Every time we see each other at conferences, I'll hear Jacinta's voice from the other side of the atrium, like Topher. And we'll hug.
I could just sit there and listen to Colin speak for hours. Colin's
voice
He's Scottish. I just love his accent.
Voice is like syrup. It is just beautiful. But into just putting aside the friendship and just going hard-nosed politics, to defect from your party, step into a party and immediately be on the ballot as a deputy leader, I don't think actually strengthens the case of the leader that you're supporting. I think from an internal point of view within, because let's not forget the people in politics, they're all trying to build their own little kingdoms and climb up that pole. Someone just parachuting themselves in from another party and then going straight into the number 2 spot is probably actually going to push people away from the person that you're supporting. Now, I don't think she intended that. No, I might be wrong about that, but that's my instinctive read on it. So I think the politics of that was a little bit clumsy. And I will say that, Jacinta Price has not been in politics for a long, long time. And where she's been in politics, the NT is its own unique beast. And so I think maybe she needs to spend 3 years, maybe 6 years in the Liberal Party before re-challenging and actually just learn that landscape, because that's going to be a very different landscape to the one that she's been exposed to up to this point in time.
What I find fascinating with the Liberal Party, and I'm sure anyone that supports the Labor Party will not see it this way. I just talked before about in my 30s having an ego death where everything just sort of falls around and it's cataclysmic and you're sitting there looking at all the burnout things going, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
That is the single best thing that can happen to anyone at any point. And we all have it. Like every single one of us. Some of us earlier, some of us a lot later in life. The earlier, the better, I would argue. But that is what has basically happened to the Liberal Party. They've moved so far away from what they were meant to do. Like, the whole Robert Menzies speech.
Yep.
I would say they are...
We Believe speech.
Yeah, they are so far removed from what the Liberals used to stand for. They are Labor light, as everyone says. And what I think we also see with the Liberal Party is, as you've referred to in the past, they have their backers, they have their donors who are pulling the strings. And what we need is for those people to completely lose their power, lose control. It needs to get to a point where it doesn't matter what they do, it's done, it's failed. Yeah. And then from there, it can be like, it will be a rebuild. And I agree with Cos Samaras when he said it's probably going to be 10 years before the Liberals will be able to take power again. I don't know if that's the case as far as taking power, but I think it'll be a good few years before we'll see the Liberal Party united and strong. Hopefully people get so frustrated with Laser that we do see a flip.
With Laser?
Labour. Did I say Laser?
You said Laser. It's okay. So people say this very often in politics. Oh, this is going to be for a generation now. They'll never recover from that in 10 years. And then 3 years later, it's they've come roaring back. a day is a long time in politics, let alone 3 years. So I wouldn't go nearly as far as to say that. But what I will say is there is no point them coming back and winning an election unless they have first gone through that process and rediscovered their roots and their values.
The last thing I want is a party to get in because they Steve and Bradbury'd it.
Correct. And my issue with Susan Ley as the leader of the Liberal Party and with David Littleproud as the leader of the Nationals is that in both cases, in my opinion, they are part of the problem. They are not going to be able to lead their respective parties into something new and different, which in this case is recapturing the essence of what made them who they were in the first place, because these people are the ones that marched them away from that and have been responsible for that decline over the last 20 years.
Would you say they're Australia's version of Swamp?
We have a swamp. There's no question about that. And I would suggest to you that the swamp is much larger and more insidious than probably most Australians would be aware. And yes, I would say Susan Ley in particular, I would happily characterise as a swamp creature. And in fact, that was the title of a video I released only a couple of weeks ago, Susan Ley, Swamp Creature. And I put her firmly in that category specifically because her own Liberal Party branch tried to oust her as the nominated member for the Liberal Party in her seat, which is where I live now, prior to the 2019 election. And this is when Scott Morrison stepped in and did his captain's picks, where it was 12 in total, but 9 sitting members that he turned around and said, no, we're keeping them in, regardless of what the membership may want. Now, the idea of a political party is you have members who sign up to that branch and then they vote amongst themselves to decide who the candidate is going to be to try and get elected for the party in that branch.
Yeah.
That's kind of what makes that side of the process democratic. Then you've got a Scott Morrison steps in and says, well, I'm going to be Xi Jinping and just top down tell you who your candidate's going to be. Now, he defends himself on the basis of two things. Number one, they were a sitting member. I say, okay, that's fair, and they should get to sit out that term. But the members of that branch should still decide who their candidate is going to be for the next election. That's literally one of the most important jobs they have. So don't depose a sitting member. Okay, that's fine, but don't override the will of the membership in order to give that safe seat to someone that the membership no longer wants. But secondly, he said that he had to step in order to defend the role and the position and the status of women within the Liberal Party. But of the 9 sitting members that he defended, that he captains picked, 6 of them were men. Yeah. So that's just cover. That's the cover story that they focus grouped and said this will be the socially acceptable thing for us to say. The reality is that he was protecting the people that protected him. Yeah. Because Susan Ley was then went on to be the Environment Minister. Had been the Environment Minister previously. No, went on to become the Environment Minister, excuse me. And she covered for, so one of the problems that a Liberal National Party government has is farmers and irrigators who are angry about the misuse of irrigation water for environmental purposes. So what do you do about that if you're Scott Morrison? Well, you put Susan Ley into the position of Environment Minister because her constituents are those very farmers. And she can turn around to them and say, it's okay, I've got you. I'm your representative. I'm going to look after you. And then do whatever the hell Scott Morrison wants her to do. So I consider her to be two-faced. Yeah. I consider her to be telling her constituents that she's representing their interests whilst actually she's just climbing the slippery pole and doing whatever she's told to do in whatever portfolio she's given. She's been rewarded now with leadership of the party, but she is absolutely 100% a swamp creature who, in my opinion, is far more focused on building her career than building her constituents, let alone Australia. Yeah. And the best thing that could happen between now and the next election is for Susan Ley to be deposed as the leader of the Liberal Party, and for David Littleproud to be deposed as the leader of the Nationals Party, and for then the 2 new leaders who have hopefully found a backbone to then come back together in coalition.
Yeah, I hope that too. On a tangent to State Liberal Party, Moira Deeming just followed me on X. Oh, which lovely. I thought was interesting because yet again, and this is my perfect segue into our next topic, we have had knife crime in Victoria. And I may or may not have done another 2 rants. And every week now spicy I seem to be ranting.
Spicy Carls.
It just comes out. It's
you need a Spicy Carls dance. Should that be our second T-shirt? Viewers, you tell us.
I don't know what I was going to do. I don't know why I did that.
We need a Spicy Carls design as well.
I'm working on it, but so Gareth and I have been planning these T-shirts. I wanted to make something that's genuinely cool that people are like, yeah, I want that T-shirt. Yeah. It looks cool. And then G was like, no, make it funny. Like put Topher's face on there, like, you know, doing this. And I was like, I don't want to wear a T-shirt with his
that's
face
gonna
on
be
it.
so that was my wife's assumption. It was like, oh, when I told her we're doing a shirt, she's like, oh, is it like, you know, have your face on. I'm like, no.
Yeah, we want people to buy the T-shirts.
I don't put my face on my shirts. I ain't putting it on the Oddcast shirt. Like, no.
But interestingly, on my rant, I won't play for you now, but if you guys go and follow me on X, it's just Carl J. Soda, you'll see them there, or on Instagram. But the first one I was talking about the knife crime, but then the second one I basically said, yo, Liberal Party, here's some free advice from someone you don't have to use taxpayer funds to solicit.
Yeah.
When Jacinta Allen got up and said that she was doing prohibition for machetes, instead of saying, well, why didn't you do it earlier? Maybe you could say, what are you going to do about the person holding the machete?
Correct. But this is exactly the same trap they fell into when it came to COVID. All they ever did was criticise the government on the basis of not having done enough, not having gone far enough, not having been fast enough. This is why they failed completely as an opposition. Is because they do not oppose.
I ask you guys watching this, are you sick to death of your politicians just being like schoolyard children? You did it. No, you did it. No, you did it. Meh.
It's worse than that. They're absolutely visionless, and they have no set of values against which they compare any given issue before making a public proclamation. They're just concerned about scoring points.
I told you about Mark, what's his name? Mark Doofus? Mark Doofus. Doofus sounds way better.
Dreyfus?
Dreyfus? What did I call him? Doofus?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. He is a doofus. He came and knocked on my door. If the shoe fits, man.
You told me about it, yes.
And
this has got to be probably, this is just before the election.
This is just before the election, and he knocked on the wrong door. Yeah. And essentially he was basically saying, well, did you know the Liberal Party? And I literally cut him off and I said, is that all you have? Is that I said, you're a grown ass man and all you have is deflecting and blaming the other party who's no longer in power. I was like, do you have any thoughts of your own, or is that the party line that you're expected? And he was just like,
yeah. Well, when I was in America before the Trump versus Hillary Clinton election, I took to just saying to people, tell me why I should be excited about a Hillary Clinton presidency without referring to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like, tell me what's great about Hillary without saying a word about Trump.
They can't. That's all they know.
And honestly, for most of them, they genuinely had nothing.
Yeah.
But I believe we're going to talk about the new attempt at prohibition because it'll work in the 2020s, even though it failed in the 1920s.
Well,
it's guaranteed to work this time.
Yeah, because, there's one thing that criminals really care about, and that is new laws.
They're like, oh, damn it, I've got to go and stab people with this pen.
Oh, no, machetes are now illegal. Oh,
whatever will I do?
How will I ever get one?
So there's a couple of things I absolutely love about this. So anything with a blade above 20 centimetres whose primary use is not in the kitchen. Right. So there's a whole bunch of just camping enthusiasts, bushwalking, orienteering, blah, 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 who legitimately use machetes for their hobby. There's a bunch of people who just like knives, and that's a perfectly legitimate thing to like. I'm not one of them.
You
but
could say a hacksaw kind of
thing.
Falls in that category.
It could do. I mean, once it sort of fits in more of that saw mold, I believe it is exempt. But there's two really weird things about what's been done, which just show you how hasty and how ill thought through it is. Number one, knives with a blade over 20 centimetres in length are now more illegal than guns. Because you can get guns under a licensing system. There is no licensing system for these knives.
No.
So if you happen to have a historical collection or some legitimate reason why you wanted to have these things, well, you've just been turned into a criminal. Now, I happen to know of people who, as soon as this was announced, went down to their local outdoor goods store and bought up every machete they had, right? We've just created another black market. And we've just classified a whole group of otherwise law-abiding people as criminals for no good reason, and that does not end well. So the second big issue that I have with it is that technically, as I read the legislation, if someone made a habit of only attacking people with their machete in their kitchen, then they could argue that their knife is primarily used in the kitchen and is therefore exempt from the ban. Doesn't say what it gets used for in the kitchen. It just has to be used in the kitchen. So if they break into your home, drag you by your hair into the kitchen, and then cut your head off, at least they won't get in trouble for having an illegal knife.
All right. So to give people who are watching this who don't know what we're talking about, we're basically referring to the Northland shopping centre incident that happened on Sunday the 25th. I have notes now. I am organised.
I'm so impressed.
So a violent altercation erupted between two rival youth gangs in a food court involving up to 10 individuals armed with machetes and knives. There is one man in his 20s who sustained serious injuries and was hospitalised. 3 others were treated for anxiety. I hope that's not the criminals were treated for anxiety. Apparently one of the...
I don't think it's anxiety when there are people trying to kill you or each other. I think that's gone beyond the anxiety label.
Well, apparently one of the youths involved also has a fractured skull.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just, casual.
I mean, obviously an anxiety-induced fractured skull.
And so the shopping centre was placed into lockdown because, we love lockdown in Victoria. And there's been massive police response. And there was even some civilians who were able to take down and disarm some of these guys.
Impressively and absolute respect, mad respect to those people.
But the irony of this attack, if we want to call it that, or knife incident, is that just 2 months ago, Jacinta Allen came out saying we are going to have the toughest bail laws in the country. And Topher, what do you think has happened to these machete-wielding assailants after they were arrested? Tell me.
They've been locked up and Jacinta Allen has personally swallowed the key to make sure that they can't be released.
They were all out on bail that day.
Oh, I'm
that
shocked.
day.
Shocked, Carly.
I know.
Did not see that coming.
I was absolutely blindsided by it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, 3 of the worst 4 offenders were already on bail before.
Multiple charges of bail.
Offending.
Yeah.
And so now they're being re-released on bail, having just violently offended whilst on bail.
And leading to a massive community response, locking down a shopping centre and traumatising countless people.
Can I just say, I would love to know what the most lenient bail laws in the world look like, because it really sounds like they're probably identical to the toughest ones.
My biggest thing, and this is kind of what my rant was about, and Jacinta Allen obviously popped up on the news the next morning to say that the machete ban would now be immediate. And as I said, this is just a platitude. This is just to calm everyone down. Like, we're doing something. Again, we've talked about everybody knows the world is full of stupid people. Do you remember that song?
No.
It was a song from the 90s.
Okay.
Everybody
Good for you.
knows the world is full of stupid
I was busy
people.
reading classical literature and studying economics.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you guys know that song? It was a big song. Anyway, what I'm really frustrated in is how many more people in Victoria now seeing it with their own eyes, witnessing it, knowing firsthand people who have gone through this themselves. How much longer can you tolerate being gaslit by this government to say they're doing something about it whilst it only escalates? This is the thing. Youth crime has only escalated since it's become a prolific news topic. And now I've noticed that Channel 7 are going hard after this Labor Party. They were very much on Dan's side during lockdown. Now Channel 7 seems to be, like a rabid dog after Jacinta Allen. But politics aside, just your average discerning adult who may have had their car stolen, their home invaded, may have seen these kids bashing each other up, may know someone who was impacted by it.
Yeah.
How much longer will you sit there and swallow this shit from Jacinta Allen that they're doing something about it, knowing full well they get arrested, they're back out on bail immediately to reoffend?
I don't want to be a shameless grifter, but let me be a shameless grifter for a second. Because in this book, I talk about political incentives. There's 3 chapters dedicated to different aspects of political incentives. And one of the chapters is dedicated to this thing called the do something reflex. And politicians, if they do something, cannot lose, politically speaking. It doesn't matter if the thing they do is the right thing, doesn't matter if it works, if they just do something. And unfortunately, we create that incentive as a voting public, and the media then contribute to that as well. So unfortunately, if we want to see something better than this kind of knee-jerk Jacinta Allen, we're banning machetes immediately kind of propaganda is really all it is. It's not actually taking action. It's just propaganda. Then we need to become better and more discerning and demand better. But also, what we've got here is just a classic case of doubling and tripling down on what's not working.
No.
It's already not working. And I'm going to say something really, really controversial and probably going to get me into trouble. That is, functionally, in Victoria now, Victoria Police are the reason that you are unsafe. Because if you prepare yourself to defend yourself, you put weapons in strategic places in your home, you go and get a gun, heaven forbid, and you use that to effectively protect yourself and your family, who is it that comes after you?
The police.
It's Victoria Police.
Yeah.
So the reason why we are disarmed victims, unable to effectively defend ourselves and our families from thugs like this running around with machetes, is because of Victoria Police.
Yeah.
And so the very institution that was instituted with the promise of, but we're going to look after you, we're going to keep you safe, you can call on us. They are now the reason why Victoria is a disarmed state full of easy victims.
I think I've said this on an earlier podcast, but prior to maybe like COVID, I never understood the Second Amendment and the American obsession with guns. I liked firing guns. Firing guns is fun.
Yeah, shooting guns good.
Shooting guns is good. But now I'm like, holy shit. I get it now. Like, it's just snapped in my head.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. You never want the government to have this much power over you. And I don't want to go down an ideological argument, but more so like trying to keep it on topic here. In Victoria, I know countless people who have assaulted these criminals when they've broken into their home. And they're all up on assault charges for assaulting a minor who came into their house with a machete trying to steal a car. And this is the upside down world that we're not even allowed to question this anymore. We are being told that we are bad people for even talking about maybe this is an immigration issue. Maybe we are importing people who are incompatible with our own values.
Or maybe we're just not holding them to the unacceptable standard
We've got
of law
a
and
two-tiered
accountability.
justice system.
Correct.
We are not willing to have the conversation around the lack of parenting of kids these days, and that opens a can of worms, and you're not allowed to talk about that.
Oh, the minute you talk about discipline,
Right, and we've got a generation of kids who are being told that who you are is more than okay, and mediocrity is great. So why would you even try? Just, you deserve everything just for existing, because equity is far more important than equality. And so there are so many different issues here that whenever we want to get to the crux of it and actually have that conversation, we can't because of like identity politics, because everything that we say is weaponized against the people who are the victims, not the people committing the crimes. And I've made a deliberate point of using the person's face in our thumbnail, and people will come after you making it about race. I haven't said a goddamn thing about race. I've never talked about race. I used the photo of the kid holding the machete. If he doesn't want his photo used, well, then don't hold the machete. And if it was a white kid, I would have done the exact same thing. And they're like, oh, you should black out his face. I'm like, why? He's proud of it. He's doing this in public.
There's a lot of jokes, right? You should black out his face. There's a lot of jokes in there.
Don't do it.
I'm going to leave them all alone.
We're about to get monetized.
Okay, all right. I won't sabotage.
Let me enjoy this moment.
All right, fine.
But I just find
Just know that there were jokes there and I let them go.
Excellent. I just find any of this stuff when it comes to identity politics so reductive. And it's like we always have to sidestep the actual issue. And my point to the Liberal Party and my point to any of you guys watching this is grow a fucking backbone. Sorry to swear, but I have to be emphatic about this. Grow a backbone and start having the actual conversation we need to have. And that is, kids are not disciplined. Kids are not held accountable. They don't know consequences. Why? Because it's all helicopter parenting. It's all, no, let them be kids. They don't need to know. No. Smack the shit out of your kids. Sorry, but these kids deserve...
Otherwise, you end up with this.
Well, this is the consequence.
And the bleeding hearts say to me, oh, you're advocating for the Second Amendment and self-defense in Australia. Do you want these kids to get shot in the face? Yep. Only a few of them.
Yeah.
Because once a few of them get shot in the face, the rest of them wise up real fast.
Well,
and what we've got, sorry, let me finish that point because people are going to take that out of context. What we have instead is things like kids killing themselves, wrapping themselves around a tree, like what we talked about a couple of months ago. These kids are dying anyway.
Yeah.
But they're going to keep dying because they're dying in circumstances that don't teach them a lesson. If they had the ever-loving shit beat out of them by a homeowner they broke into and everyone got around and celebrated that homeowner and the police said, thank you for doing our job for us, we'll come and clean up the what's left of the kids. At that point, all the other kids are going to sit there and go, oh, that didn't end so well. They didn't get the TikTok video they thought they were going to get out of that one.
Well, this is the thing that drives me crazy. And again, it's the bleeding hearts, the progressives, the people who, they come from poor homes. They come from the hood. They don't know better. I'm sorry, they do know better. They watch this shit on social media. It has been celebrated and has been celebrated, which is why I bring up pop culture so much, which we'll get into with Diddy, because this is important. And this is the thing that annoys me about the people who disparage me from wanting to talk about culture. Why do you think these kids want to walk around looking like gangsters? because it is celebrated. It makes them cool. They feel like they're part of something. Why? They have no alternative. It's not cool to be a guy anymore. It's not cool to do well at sport. It's not cool to be successful. You got to be a victim. How do you become a victim? You jump into this world.
Or, unfortunately, the people that reject that but don't get good guidance then go down the pathway of being a man means being materialistic and egocentric and asserting dominance and all of that. And so whichever way they go on that particular false dichotomy leads to some pretty bad places, and we're seeing the outworking of that.
My biggest issue, like I think there was a story in WA a few months ago where a homeowner bashed the living shit out of someone who broke in, and it just so happened the person was Aboriginal. And of course, rather than talking about the actual thing, which is person breaks into home, homeowner defends the house and the people in it and teaches that person a lesson. The whole thing came about race. That was it. It just became Aboriginal gets bashed. And then, of course, you've got the family on the news saying this is like racism, and this was targeted.
Our beautiful little boy who's never done anything wrong, and he's just a little bit misguided as he breaks into people's homes with weapons and attacks them.
The conversation just continually gets hijacked. And us as the general population, as the people on the ground, need to stop getting spooked by this conversation and go, no, fuck off. Literally fuck off. That is not the problem. No one brought up race. You brought up race. I'm bringing up the fact that this person broke into this person's house. This person defended their house, rightfully so. This is a cut and dry case. Boom, jail.
My right to protect my home trumps your right to not have your feelings hurt. End of story.
As someone who has been robbed twice in 6 months, I have lost. I actually can't even add up the figure. It makes me traumatized to think about it. And just to give you guys a round table discussion about this, the impact of those two thefts. One, it impacted my ability to work. I lost my equipment. It also made me feel terribly, terribly unsafe in both my home and with my car, to the point where I've now become a little bit paranoid because every sound wakes me up from deep sleep, which means I am now suffering from insomnia.
And also, by the way, if you don't feel safe in your car or in your house, and as a general rule, we feel less safe out in public for obvious reasons, then there is nowhere left where you feel safe.
There is nowhere. And G went to Queensland for a couple of days about a month or so ago, and I didn't sleep at all. At all. And I guess that's like my subconscious response. I wasn't injured in the home invasion. It's more so that unsettling feeling that even despite my best intentions of locking everything up, they might still do it. They might come back. And one of the criminals who broke into either my car or the house, I don't know, because obviously they stole my handbag, they stole all my stuff. They have my business cards. On my business cards, my Instagram. They have been torturing me on Instagram. This has been going on since November. I've been done twice. And then I'm not allowed to say anything because they're kids. They might be Sudanese. They might be, like from poor homes. No, sorry. Fuck right off. And that's what I'm asking all of you guys. I know I'm being sweary.
You're asking them to fuck right off. No. That's kind of counterproductive, Carly.
No, what I'm saying is stop tiptoeing around these issues and start having the actual conversation.
And I think the next layer on top of that is to find people in your area or people that you care about for whatever reason who are being prosecuted for protecting their families or are being targeted because they spoke up or these various things. And at the very least help to shine a light.
G will be so happy you did that. It bothers him.
To shine a light on that, show up at the courthouse for them peacefully, of course, but to just as a show of solidarity. I just did an interview earlier this week with Spike Cohen. He's an American guy who runs a thing called You Are the Power. And it's basically a coalition. They receive donations and they spend that money on a combination of lawyers and various other experts. And they get alongside families who are being wrongly prosecuted by the government. They just had a huge win with a family called the Hernandez family. Their kids were taken off them, or one of their kids was taken off them. They were accused of terrible, horrible child abuse because the child had various fractures in their bones and bruising and all sorts of things. But they had medical history for the child. And the reason why they went to the doctor in the first place was in order to try and get to the bottom and continue this process of trying to figure out why their child was bruising so badly. They weren't aware of the fractures at that point. It was proven and shown that their child had a known genetic condition that was provable by a gene test that caused weakness and fractures in bones and bruising from relatively normal activities. And yet they didn't see their child for about 2 years and massive fight through the courts and everything. And they just won that court case last week. Not only did they win that court case, but they've actually forced the state of Georgia in the United States to change laws so that what was done to that family can never be done again to any other family. And I've said for a long time, the only way this changes is if we put the shoe on the other foot and we get involved in lawfare going the other way.
Yeah.
So families that have been victimised by the Australian so-called child protective services, the various police services around the country, and various other government agencies, being prosecuted for defending your family, etc. One of the reasons why they struggle to fight back is because they get drained of financial resources and they get drained of friends and support, because the police are very good and the media are very good at isolating these people, making everyone else back off and go, oh, well, so where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah,
There must be something here.
Yeah.
Well,
I've been a victim of that.
Absolutely. And that's how the game is played, and they keep destroying these people because they isolate them first. And what's needed now is, and I don't know how this has to work, but I'm going to say it, and hopefully this can form over time. What's needed now is a coalition of people that are going to stand by each other through the worst of all of this, and ultimately start to achieve some of what you or the power are achieving in the US.
Well, these blanket statements like believe all women and, violence is, words of violence, and all of these sort of new progressive ideas that really came to the forefront during COVID that were adopted verbatim without any nuance to it. That makes sense. Believe all women. And then you see, it co-opts the ability to be able to have these difficult discussions. Now, obviously, there are situations that call for harder punishments because there are bad people in this world. But believing people are inherently good allows us to have a bit more of a yardstick for being able to go, all right, what actually happened here? So, for example, what I mean by that is the homeowner who bashed the shit out of the kid who broke in, that person is inherently good. They were pushed to a bad act of assault by someone else's decisions. And I know someone right now who's currently up on 2 assault charges for doing exactly that. This gang of kids had targeted their house a couple of times unsuccessfully, came back because this person has a nice car, and they caught them a couple of times on the surveillance, and then they knew they'd come back. And when they did come back, they were waiting, and they got beaten to within an inch of their life. So now obviously the parents of the child who got assaulted is charging the person who assaulted them. There is no discussion anymore around, well, why was your 14-year-old trying to steal this person's car multiple times? That gets completely pushed under.
Can I be picky and pick you up on a little quirk of language there? You said this is a good person who's been pushed to do a bad thing. I don't think that's the case. I don't think using violence to protect your home and your family is a bad thing.
I don't, but people will deem assault as assault. And is it not you who tells me that human rights always matter? So therefore, assault is assault.
No, human rights always matter, but your right to your property is a human right.
Yes.
See, people often, and we have talked about this before, but not for a little while, so I'll touch on it again briefly. People say, oh, they're just things. They're just things. Let them go, Carly. Let it go. You can talk, you've talked about the impact that it had on you going forward. But actually, let's talk about what those things represent going back. Because you traded your hours, your life, your talents, your other options, other opportunities and things you could have done with that money. You forewent all of that in order to be able to buy and spend the time to earn the money to buy the thing.
Yeah.
That actually represents your life going backwards, and it represents your opportunities going forwards. So when you deprive someone of their property, you are actually depriving them of a portion of their life. It's a little bit like if I locked someone in a basement for 2 hours and I went, oh, it was just 2 hours. It's only a portion of your life. It's not that big a deal, is it? Saying, oh, well, they only stole your car. Come on, it's not that big a deal. Well, that's all the work you put into it and all of the opportunity that it represented for you going forward. So you have absolutely the human right to defend your property, including with violence, because what you are defending is it represents a portion of your life.
This is the issue, though. Again, when you do speak up about that, there will be those, and I saw this with me when it went viral. People like, oh, she got a fancy car, like, oh, she'll be fine, insurance will cover it, and all this sort of stuff. Do you not conflate the fact that because theft is increasing, because this is a ongoing issue and has been for years, that insurance is now getting to the point where it's either crazy expensive, or the insurance company just won't give you coverage?
Yep.
We are seeing that now with cars that have been stolen and recovered. The insurance company will never cover it again. So now if that car gets stolen again, that's it. You're out of pocket.
Yep.
We're seeing this now with unique cars, expensive cars. The insurance premium is either so expensive or, again, no coverage.
Yeah.
But no one wants to have these conversations. The reason everything is going up, the reason our rego every year goes up is because of all of these other issues that are causing the government to respond in the way they are. So you can sit here in one breath, and I know I'm conflating all these issues together, but it is all tied together. You can sit here and go, oh, the cost of living is killing us. Well, yes, your policies are creating the cost of living because everything is going up for a reason.
Yeah. Cost of crime is a huge unrecognized problem. And let me give you a very simple illustration. Imagine how much wealthier we would be if you did not have to protect yourself against theft or assault or things from others. Imagine if the lock industry simply didn't exist.
Yeah.
Nothing ever needed a password. There was no security locking people out, keeping people away, because the idea of theft, that concept just didn't exist.
Yeah.
And take all the money and time and energy that gets spent on tracking things, recording things, locking things, etc., as a means of protecting ourselves from bad actors and other humans that might wish to do us harm. Imagine if that whole industry didn't exist and all that wealth and money was actually going into something productive, something that was actually adding to our wealth rather than just keeping people from taking it. That's the cost of crime. And that's before you get to the cost of actual victimization and the impact on people and so forth. That's just looking at the dollar spend that we spend on keeping other people at bay because we can't trust them. The cost of crime is absolutely enormous. And so when you have a state, to come back to this machete ban and these bail laws, when you have a state that keeps letting criminals back out again when they're known reoffenders, what you're doing is tremendously adding to the mental angst, but also the financial burden on the entire state, because everyone now has to spend time and mental and emotional energy and money protecting themselves from these people that the state could and should have dealt with.
Well, I think I've talked about this on a previous episode, but there is the victims of crime.
Absolute debacle.
Right, and I don't know what you call that, like a government scheme, where the state government will pay up to, or I think it's like $60,000 per person impacted by the crime itself, whether you're the first-hand victim or second-hand or whatever. So basically the state government, knowing that this is a problem, would rather just pay the victims essentially for their silence and then deal with the issue. And look, you know, you guys can get all conspiracy theory and this is all by design and whatever. I actually don't see the upside for allowing this crime to go unchecked. I really don't see the upside. Is it about devaluing certain areas? Is it about radical acceptance of multiculturalism? Like, I don't actually understand the upside.
No, well, I don't think there's an upside in a conspiratorial sense. They're trying to manipulate property values or anything like that. But I think it would be to acknowledge, it would be to admit failure of ideology.
Yeah.
So their ideology regarding immigration, regarding multiculturalism, relies on it working. And for them to acknowledge that this crime problem actually really does exist and it's unacceptable and it's as a result of their own policies would be a repudiation of pretty dearly held ideological positions for the political left.
Well, I see this now, even whenever there's more youth crime or whenever this sort of gets in the news and people are discussing it, your gigantic fucking water bottle. Do you know what you look like? You look like one of those basic women who take their massive water bottle everywhere.
Yeah.
Their Frank Green bottle and stuff.
I'm a basic bitch. I'm amazed you hadn't figured that out earlier.
You are a bit of a basic bitch.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, on that topic, just to keep it serious, what I find interesting is how people want to approach this issue. So just yesterday I was talking to, I need to figure out his name. His partner's name's Frank. His partner Frank was assaulted with a machete a few months ago, and he got sliced up. And what's his name? I think it's Mikey. Oh God, I don't want to get it wrong. Probably going to get it wrong. I will find that as I'm talking about it.
Yes.
And so his partner was, the bunch of kids said these homophobic slurs, and then he was slashed with a machete. Here he is, Mikey, and. What do you think the consequence was for the kid who sliced him with a machete?
Well, I mean, given the situation we're in, I'm guessing it was wet lettuce.
It was $100 fine.
Yeah.
That's it. He sliced his arm open. He could have cut an artery. He could have cut nerves. This could be permanent damage.
Tendons,
I mean, it is
ligaments.
permanent damage as far as the trauma goes.
And there'd be a scar as well. But yes, I mean...
$100.
Yeah, wow.
My parking fines in Bayside are $110.
Yeah.
And essentially what you're saying is that being sliced open by a machete is as, like, non-destructive as a parking fine of overstaying my welcome in a parking spot.
Yeah.
That this is I don't understand. And again, no one wants to have these conversations because, it's a bit taboo. You can't talk about immigrants. You can't talk about race. You can't talk about youths. Well, no, I actually do believe this stems from the fact that these young kids have nothing else going on. It really does, right? They've got their phones, they get radicalized, and again, people don't want to admit this. Your sons and daughters are being radicalized by TikTok, by Instagram, because they have access to things that they otherwise would not have heard of. Why do you think they all now want to cut off their dicks, right? Like, TikTok is a cesspool, and all you need is to see one of those videos, and then TikTok's algorithm will just feed you 50 others. So you start to get this confirmation bias. You're like, oh, this must be true. And this is the thing. An idiot can argue a really compelling case with a bunch of made up shit. And then they can go and cherry pick all the information to be like, see, I told you. And it doesn't matter. These young people, their frontal lobes aren't even developed yet. They don't discern. They just go, well, it must be true because I saw her on TikTok. These young kids have seen crime in America and overseas. They've watched the movies and they're like, yeah, that sounds like fun. It's adrenaline. I'm not a young boy. You were.
Gangster's paradise
but it's celebrated in rap music as well. You know, and this is, again, I'm bringing up 100 different things, but this is all part of the discussion that no one wants to have. The OnlyFans. That has happened because we have songs like...
we weren't going to get through an episode without talking about OnlyFans.
But why do you think it exists? Because we have songs like Wet Ass Pussy topping the pop culture charts.
To be fair, those are... I don't think one exists because of the other. I think those are both different expressions of the same underlying problem, which is a rejection of any kind of well, it's just celebrated morality.
No, I would say it's celebrated degeneracy because it's shock. Because, look, 20 years ago, that song would have been obscene. It would have been banned. But now Kanye West can put out a song called Hail. I don't think I'm allowed to say the word on here.
Yeah,
but you know the song. And start wearing swastikas. And, okay, that's outrageous. But if he was to say Hail Satan, it'd be number one. Was it Sam Smith had
yeah. But I'm so glad we got rid of Baby It's Cold Outside. I think that was a real...
Yeah,
it was really important.
It sounded bad.
For us to deal with the implied...
But this is the point I'm trying to make. Like, we are in this bizarre world where the actual problem is staring us right down the barrel.
Yeah.
And we're going to go, well, it couldn't be that. It must be this little thing over here.
There is none so blind as those who will not see. My mind actually goes back to, I think it's Tacitus who says, the abundance of law breeds contempt for the law. And what we're seeing here in this comparison you give, which is so valid, a parking ticket is more than a fine for slicing someone's arm open with a machete. We now hold all laws in contempt because we have laws for everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything is micromanaged and controlled and monitored and punished for any sort of transgression. The abundance of law has now bred contempt for it. And it is really quite astonishing to watch. And you're absolutely right. We're all sitting here going, well, this is obvious.
Yeah.
And yet there are people that can't see it. Or is it actually that there are people who won't see it?
Well, I really do think it will get to a point where your house is on fire and you're sitting, you know that meme, like, this is fine?
Yeah, this is fine, yeah.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
But then people will start to feel those flames on their arms and go, hang on a minute. Like, one of our favourite trolls on your channel, he still has not come over to mine.
Oh.
I don't understand. I beg him every time.
Step up.
Anyway, he was like, oh, how's it feel to know that Albanese has got a mandate? I'm like, dude, you are literally that guy sitting in the fire.
Correct.
Going,
You're
this is fine.
Yep.
And I was like, cool, we'll have a chat in 5 years.
Yeah.
And, the average Australian right now, look, and I've seen this also in your comments, this is why I bring it up, because this is how people are thinking, and I'm trying to give you guys that 30,000 foot view. They're like, oh, no one I know likes this government. No one I know. It must be rigged because they didn't vote. That's because you live in an echo chamber.
Correct.
You are speaking to people who agree with you. Go and speak to people who disagree with you.
To be fair, it now takes active effort to not be in an echo
Correct.
chamber. Echo chamber is now our default existence
Correct.
because so much of our communication is online and it's curated by an algorithm. You have to get out in the real world or actively seek out online contrary opinions in order to actively
It's honestly
break
not
your echo
hard.
chamber.
Just have
it's not hard, but you have to be active.
Yeah, but have just a simple conversation with whoever, your hairdresser, your waiter, your cab driver. And if they are a leftist or progressive, you will know within seconds because the word Trump or Elon Musk will come out of their mouth.
Yeah.
They cannot help themselves.
It's like vegans.
Yeah.
You never have to ask somebody if they're vegan because if they were vegan, they would have already told you. Yeah.
But anyway, to round out this segment, the knife crime thing, like, I didn't want to be all doomsday about it because honestly at this point I'm like, okay, maybe more people need to be cut up by machetes. Like,
Look, the older I get, the more I like George Carlin,
I don't know who that is.
comedian, and his gift, as he put it in interviews, was that he stopped caring about the outcome.
Yeah.
He just went, you know what? It's not my problem and it's not my fault. I'm going to be dead soon anyway.
So you are an accelerationist.
No. But I'm coming to realize. I mean, it's ultimately what he arrived at was the extension of what I've been saying for a while, but maybe haven't fully embraced or as fully as I should. That you're not the idiot whisperer.
No.
You can't save these people from themselves. And I am now actively taking steps to insulate my family against the idiots around us.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say around us, I don't mean in my hometown. I mean Australia-wide. And as things progress over the next couple of years, I will be putting in place things that ensure that we have options that include leaving Australia.
Yeah.
And I regret to say
Hence
that.
this podcast.
Well, yeah, I regret to say that, but this is the reality of where we are at. And, you know, if you can see that and then you do nothing, then I think you are quite culpable in betraying your kids. So if you can see what's coming, you have a responsibility, in my opinion, especially parents, have a responsibility to have options.
Do you know what I find interesting? And this might be a bit of a stretch. This is just me hypothesizing.
Mm.
Over the last, 15 years, we have been conditioned to have much shorter attention spans.
Sure.
You know, you could say that's because of social media.
Squirrel.
Yes. That.
Yes.
But, you know, thanks to algorithms, thanks to social media, you know, pick your poison, whichever one you think's more evil. But because of that now, when was the last time your average person picked up a book? And look, you might be a book reader. I'm not talking about you, Susan. I'm talking about your average person. How often do you think people are just genuinely deep diving into any topic?
50 Shades of Grey.
That was great. It was a great airport read.
I wanted to go through a bunch of smutty books, but that's the only one I can think of.
There's a new version of smutty books that I can't even. It's something of Thorns, and like I've seen all these reels on social media where they're like, oh, the husband's Bluetooth in the car connects to the wife's phone and she's listening to some smutty book and it's like, I will grab you by the throat and grab you with my dragon dick. It's like,
like what?
What? It's funny. I've never read it. I don't know what it is, but where was I going?
I have no idea. You were talking
Speaking of degeneracy.
You were talking about attention spans. I think you
Case in point.
You lost track of your own train of thought whilst criticizing our beautiful, wonderful audience for lacking attention span.
Susan's like, it's a great book. I've been reading it last week.
That is beautiful.
I'm nothing if not a perfect dichotomy of hypocrisy. No. So my point is, with our shortened attention spans, I've talked about Stalin a billion times. You've talked about Zimbabwe a billion times, Venezuela, whatever.
Yeah.
I generally don't think people have access to the ability to go beyond what's currently in their face, right? I think we're overwhelmed, we're overstimulated, and we're exhausted by like just every day. That the idea of setting aside small amounts of your day to go and learn something outside of what's currently happening is just no longer possible for the average person.
I think we are in perpetual overwhelm, and that's only partly our fault. I think the cost of living, and I think this is on purpose, the cost of living and the fact that we need both parents working has taken people right away from community building, charities, and sort of civic activities. It's taken people away from their kids. The numbers around how many families actually eat multiple meals a week together is staggeringly low. Staggeringly low.
On the couch in front of the TV too.
Yeah, a lot of the
very
time.
rarely at the dinner table.
You know, and I grew up in a family where every night we were all together for dinner. And I'm doing my best to, as often as I can, which is most of the time, do the same thing for my kids. And yeah, it's screens off, phones away. No one, you know, we're sitting at the table, we're talking. Oh, can I get down? I finished eating. Well, we haven't all finished, so you're going to stay here and you're going to be a part of the conversation. So I think it's still possible to have a lot of those things.
You have to push for it.
You have to be active and you have to be willing to make some sacrifices because it would be a lot easier for me to just let them sit on the couch and watch the TV. There'd be less kind of conflict and resistance from them if I let them do that.
To defend the parents who put their kids in front of the iPads or the TV, I've noticed this just in my day. I don't have kids, right, to be fair. But I've noticed this in my day-to-day life. And, you know, this is something that G and I have talked about at length the last couple of weeks because I am generally overwhelmed. And I finally had to admit that, like, Carly, got a little bit going on, right? So in my week, I take kids out of it, but I have this podcast, which actually takes me, maybe 15 hours a week. Then I have my own YouTube channel. Yes, of course, I know these are voluntary, but just hear me out. I have my masters. I also had a networking thing, which I've recently given up. And then I run my business. And in between all that, I need to socialize, go to the gym, cook food, keep the house clean, and spend some time with my partner.
And sleep.
When you think about it, I don't have enough time. I really don't, right? So, like, and then you watch those. I always take the mickey out of those people with the 3-hour morning routines. Like, I journaled and I ran, I went to this and I would love to know how you're getting that extra time out of your day. You know, I'll get up at 4 a.m. so I can run a marathon and then I, you know, sauna and journal. Great, good on you, dickhead. Sorry. But you look at the average person, right? And then let's say you add kids into the mix. You've got pick up, drop off, you've got bedtime, you've got extracurricular activities, weekend parties. I don't think your average person wants to be ignorant or doesn't care. I think they don't have the capacity to add more to their overwhelm.
So this is what's referred to as rational ignorance, where a given thing is something...
You always have a terminology for something that I'm like, this makes sense in my brain. It's nice to know that I'm working this all out in my own and then you're like, well, this has actually been studied.
So it's not rational for your average person to invest their precious remaining little tiny bit of spare time studying or researching or educating themselves on something that has very little impact on their life. This is why things like sports exist, because we're going to because it interests us. We like it. It's recreation. Even just watching is recreation or hobbies or these sorts of things. Because we get to those little bits of time, we need to do something that is as valuable as possible to us. It's not rational to invest it into a heavy, boring, drudgery topic that doesn't have immediate, visceral connection to our lives. And so I do understand why people don't follow things as deeply as we do. And that's literally why I do what I do with the TOFA project. I'm literally trying to encapsulate big ideas and the bigger shifts. I'm not so much in the news cycle, but I'm looking for the stories that have a bigger significance. And I'm trying to boil those down to 10, 15 minutes at a time and really give people kind of the landscape of what this story is about and what its implications are and the bigger sweep of history that's going on around this story, specifically because no rational human being has time to spend doing, keeping up to date with all of that. However, we do also, I believe, have to make better choices. People, for example, not wanting to just, I made a video about how the preferential voting system works. And there's a bunch of people that didn't watch it because they're like, oh, no, I'm not interested. Well, hold on. That's, I boiled it down to 9 minutes was the fastest version. I'm like, 9 minutes of your time to educate yourself on how our system works. This is now a you problem. This isn't about you not having time.
But they'll binge a Netflix series in a day.
This is now a you problem. This is about your priorities and your choices. And I respect that up to a point. You want to binge Netflix because that's what makes you feel good. Hey, life sucks sometimes. You need to feel good. Go binge your show. But don't tell me that, don't whinge to me about how Australians, voted for Labor again, blah, 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 if you weren't even willing to give 9 minutes to a video about how that works. So there is still choice in there.
Oh, look, I totally agree with you, but I do think I always try and play the devil's advocate because I feel like it's beneficial for me to always argue against myself.
Sure.
Like I believe X, but why would someone else believe Y? And so I always try and come at it from that point of view. And I realized that doing this podcast basically serves to tease the knots out in a way that's not intimidating to people. And, when I've sort of been talking to people about what you and I do, I've had people say to me, I get lost with TOFA. I don't know what he's talking about half the time. And I was like, of course you don't, because you don't have all the context that TOFA has. And I've said this on previous podcasts. Often when you become an expert at something, you then flex to other experts and you talk to your colleagues or your other professors or other legal experts or political commentators. It is a real art to be able to know something so well and be able to deduce it down to explain it to a 5-year-old so that they understand the concept. It's a very tough thing to do. And that's essentially what school teachers are designed to do. But when it comes to teasing out these issues, I mean, in this podcast alone, we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
These conversations are how people start to become like interested and also start to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Without these conversations, and that's why I was saying before about, the big pretty pink elephant in the room about youth crime. No one wants to have the hard questions because it gets deflected over to all these other little things, and then people go, oh, that's much easier. I'll just pay attention over there. You need to give people an opportunity to either witness a conversation like we are on this podcast and then feel like they can then participate themselves.
Sure.
And that's kind of what this podcast serves.
Which is why you should comment.
Yes. But like, I hope you guys see the big picture here. Like if we sat here like with like a professor's hat on and just talked about scholarly politics and law articles, who'd watch?
And that feedback that, not everyone, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. No one's everyone's cup of tea, and I'm not trying to be. But the feedback that I have also seen that, I can be a little bit too, and I think it really comes through on the Unemployables podcast that I just did. They did a great job of constantly asking me to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
I'll start to talk about something, and I will start at a position that is for most people halfway through the issue already. There's a bunch of explanation that needed to happen, but because I've lived this for 16 years, it's kind of, I'm going to start here because all that's a given.
It's like me talking photography. I'll just talk to you as if you know what I'm talking about.
And I'll be sitting there going,
Do you know how I best learnt this? Like it became really clear.
Sorry, can I finish that point? One of the reasons why I like podcasting with you is because you you naturally do that. You do sort of call me out and say, no, hang on, what's that? Explain that.
Yeah.
Or what actually happens is you often give the first half. So you were just talking there about how we're all so busy and we don't have time, blah, blah, blah. I can say, well, yes, that's rational ignorance and da-da-da-da. And now we're actually beginning to equip people with the vocabulary and kind of the constructs and the frameworks through which they can think through a lot of these things. So that exact dynamic is, I think, one of the reasons why this works.
See, hear that?
Yeah.
I was going to say, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No. But I noticed that recently, because again, when we talk about echo chambers, I hang around a lot of people who already know what I do.
Yeah.
I'm a photographer. I hang around other people who are stylists, makeup artists, models, brands. So I'm talking to people who are already enmeshed in what I do. G is not. G is a mechanic. G is into automotive. He's a gamer. He's, and I don't understand anything about what he does. I try, but nothing becomes clearer than when you have two people who think about the world totally differently try and explain their world to the other one. Like I try and explain art to him and I just watch his eyes glaze over. And like he's trying, but he's like,
no.
Me no compute.
Yeah.
Computer says no.
So we need to give a shout out to G actually, because off camera, what you can't see is that G has taken the absolute tangled mess that was this room.
It's very pretty, isn't it?
And has actually made it very, very pretty. He's run all the cables. He's taped them down on the floor so we're no longer the spider web that we were crawling underneath a few weeks ago that we got, I managed to catch the very end of. You caught me, I think.
Yeah, crawling on your hands and knees.
Crawling on my hands and knees in your one of the bedrooms in your house. It's very, very dodgy. It's all beautiful now.
Yeah.
Which I think makes this the perfect time for us to tell G that we need to move the studio to the other room.
No, that was actually his idea.
Well, then why did he do all of this in here?
Because he's a perfectionist.
Oh,
he likes things to look good.
I mean, it's impressive.
Yeah.
I will give him that. It is impressive. It's probably the single biggest upgrade we've had is him and a roll of gaffer tape.
It's 100 mile an hour tape.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to insult you like that. Yep, 100 mile an hour tape.
Yep. But again, like, taking that 30,000 foot view, isn't that beautiful that you can have other people who aren't aligned? Well, not G and I are aligned, as in who have totally different ways of seeing the world, who can come together and work together. Like, isn't that the whole point of everything? Like, you don't need to be an expert in everything because where you fall short, someone else can come and be that piece to the puzzle.
Human interaction and trade, etc. I mean, think about this coaster here, okay? This is made out of some sort of a fabric, so that had to be either grown or harvested in some way. That had to be purified and removed any impurities. Then it had to be dyed, it had to be spun, it had to be then turned into this shape, had to be all sort of sewn together. And then after that, it had to be packaged and shipped and put on a shelf and for you to then walk in and be able to buy a pack of however many of these.
Or order it from Amazon.
Now, if all of the people involved in that process met each other, some of them would hate each other.
Yeah.
They would be religions that are sworn to destroy each other. They would be socioeconomic systems and levels that have no comprehension of how the other lives. There would be cultures and languages and sports teams, and there would be all kinds of differences and animosities. between them, but they came together and joined forces, each of them for their own individual profit, by the way, for their own selfish, so-called, profit motive, because they wanted to work a job and make money. They came together and joined forces to make this coaster for you so that I could spill water on it at the start of every single show.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is capitalism.
That is capitalism. That is actually how a healthy society functions. And once you actually accept that, I think it becomes easier to have those people that you disagree with in your immediate proximity. You realize that you already work with a bunch of people that you disagree with every single day and you don't even know it.
Well, but when did it become the norm to discuss politics with people that you only ever have sort of superficial relationships with? Like prior to this, I didn't talk about politics with an Uber driver or I think
hold up.
Was it COVID?
I'm going to pull you up right there because we are people who say we need to talk more about politics. We've got to remove the taboo. So you can't then say, oh, when did it become normal to talk politics with everybody?
I mean, more so like now people are declaring their hate. Like, I think I told you this story when I went into uni and the next tier of students came in. And I reckon I was in that room for 30 seconds before this new person. She didn't even need to open her mouth. Everything about her said that she hated Trump. And she just had that look, the leftist look. Anyway, 30 seconds, I didn't even know her name. And I knew that she hated Trump because that's the first thing she said. I was like.
So what you're talking about is not why do we feel the need to talk about politics with everybody? It's why do we need to use politics as a dividing line between everybody?
Before I can even get to know your name, who do you vote for? That's where it is. It's weaponized.
What's your politics? And it becomes the most interesting thing about them. This is what's hilarious to me is whatever you lead with is the best you've got. When someone makes an argument, the argument they start with, it's the best they've got. When someone leads with I'm a Trump hater, I'm like, that's the most interesting thing about you.
Well, do you know what's funny? I've actually got a few people in my Instagram DMs who are progressive leftists, but they're like, Carls, I disagree with you, but God, I love listening to you, or I love your work, and I just ignore it. And I'm like, that's so refreshing to me.
Yeah. And we need a lot more of that. All right, what we also need more of is time because we're going to run out of time and we won't have got through our topics. No,
we're going to get through everything.
You reckon?
This has been a good podcast. I think it's been interesting.
It's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
All right, so
and hey, we talked about knife crime and machetes and we didn't make it dark.
No, we didn't.
We had a good laugh. We had a good laugh about people being cut open.
Yeah.
Because that's healthy.
Well, it's the norm in Victoria now.
Oh, that's right. We just got to get used to it.
But this is the thing. If you don't mock it, you got to get to a point where you can see the humour, right? Otherwise, it does get dark. But moving across to something, this is probably a bit dark, and I don't think we should make jokes about this one because it's not very good. Okay, so I'm going to read you this. On just January the 7th in 2024 in How Long, New South Wales, 24-year-old Corby Jean Walpole set her longtime friend, 23-year-old Jake Loader, on fire during a night of heavy drinking and cocaine use at a party. The incident followed hours of mutual antagonism, culminating in Loader making a misogynistic remark, telling Walpole she should stay in the kitchen making scones if she couldn't keep up with the men drinking. Enraged, Walpole doused Loader with petrol from her garage and ignited him with a lighter after he taunted her to do it. He suffered third-degree burns to 55% of his body, was placed in an induced coma for 8 days and spent 74 days in a Melbourne hospital burns unit and underwent 10 surgeries. He can no longer go out in the sun due to severe skin damage and struggles with temperature regulation. Walpole, who had been battling depression and substance abuse since a 2022 breakup, pleaded guilty to one count of burning or maiming using corrosive fluid in the Aubrey District Court. She has since expressed deep remorse, stating, "I feel horrible, remorseful, guilty for what I have done to Jake, not only to Jake but his family. I would do anything to go back in time." Despite her defense claiming provocation due to Loader's behavior, Judge Jennifer English ruled the attack unprovoked and particularly violent, fueled by drugs and alcohol. She was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison with parole eligibility in November 2029.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about that.
I have a lot to say about this because it's not about the case itself, right? The case itself is heinous. That is an escalation that is just completely uncalled for. That's not normal thinking. There's two things that stood out to me just reading that. The first thing is she'd been battling depression and substance abuse since 2022. She's 24. So 2022...
No, I thought she was older than that. Oh, I thought he was 24.
No, she's 24. He was 23.
Oh, excuse me. Yep.
So she was 24 in 2024, which means that in 2022 she was 22. So she was young. And she had depression and substance abuse. Why is that an excuse all of a sudden due to a breakup? A 22-year-old going through a breakup who now has a very adult problem of substance abuse. Okay, sure. So that is what her defense argued made her take that step of going, I'm going to walk out to the garage, pick up the gasoline, pour it all over this guy, and then I'm going to literally light the match. No, she knew full well what she was doing. I'm sorry. That is not someone who's out of mind. She might have been drunk. I've been drunk many times, like in my youth, but I didn't do stupid things like light people on fire. So I just find that a completely useless claim. They talk about cocaine. Cocaine doesn't do that to you as someone who's never done it. That is, by every stretch of the imagination, someone who's on meth, someone who's on some kind of amphetamine, for sure. That's not cocaine behavior. People argue with me, but I don't believe that for a second. So I think there's a lot of things that weren't discovered in this case properly. But the bigger problem is, again, zooming out, let's take the 30,000 foot view. The social media comment sections are filled with supportive comments for the woman. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to read you a couple. If he didn't want to be on fire, why was he out alone at night without several buckets of water? What time of day was it? What was he wearing? Did he say it out loud that he didn't want to be set on fire? It sounds to me like he was asking for it. I don't believe he was actually set on fire because I've seen fire and it never burnt me, so why would I believe him? Did he do it to himself for attention? You can see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, so just for anyone that's missing the inference there, this is obviously a comment written by someone who is trying to reverse the language that can be the victim-blaming language that can be used around assaults against women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where we've gotten to a point and where I see this to be a huge issue. Again, I always read the comments. You know Brett Cooper's in the comment section?
Yeah.
I was enamored with that show because I found it really fascinating to go and look through the comments. And yes, you can argue that there's AI bot farms. You know if it's written by a bot. Sorry, but you can tell. And if you can't tell it's written by a bot, you need to go do some reading.
She needs to watch When Harry Met Sally.
Where she does the orgasm scene.
Yeah, you can tell if it's a bot. Oh, can you?
Yes.
When Harry Met Sally, he thought he could tell when it was fake.
You thought that was real?
Listen, I'm just saying. I'm making a pop culture reference. Don't shoot me down.
A pop culture reference from the 80s, dude.
Hey, it's the best I can do. It's the best I've
Do you remember
got.
this movie that was made in the 80s?
Oh, you probably haven't seen it. It's only just come out, man.
It wasn't released when you were born. Oh, sorry, it was released before you were born. Anyway, back to my serious discussion. We are normalizing violence and this escalation of dehumanizing people to allow or excuse violence really worries me.
So I was reflecting on this actually in the car on the way down here. The putting of everyone into the male or female bucket and saying you have to reflexively, if you're a woman, you have to reflexively defend other women. If you're a man, you have to reflexively defend other men because it's men versus women. We're in a fight here. We're in a battle. It's the battle of the sexes.
Well, that's what the progressives would tell you, yes.
Correct. And this, I think, is something that I'm going to have to start to address a bit more head on in my work because I hadn't, I think, fully appreciated the depth of just how insidiously this has kind of permeated how people perceive the entire world. You cannot have a conversation. So just the other week, 2 weeks ago, I made a comment around gratitude and how for a man, thank you is our equivalent of I love you. It's sort of, if you actually sincerely express gratitude towards a man for something he's done, that has that same depth of meaning and that same effect. And gratitude in a relationship is one of the most transformative things. And if a woman wants to transform her relationship with her husband, with her boyfriend, what have you, gratitude is the fastest and cheapest and easiest way to do it. Just gratitude. And then someone gets into the comments and says, oh, you accused all women of being ungrateful. Like, no, that's not.
Yeah, because everyone talks in absolutes now.
That's right. And it's men versus women. And someone will say, well, I had a husband who didn't deserve any gratitude. Well, that may or may not be true, but even if it were true, that doesn't then extend to every other man, right? And so we've allowed ourselves, and so on the one hand, you've got people that are fighting for men's rights in the courts and the family courts and so forth, and I applaud that and I support that. And in fact, I've just lined up another interview with someone who's involved in that right now. That's important because the courts are not treating everyone equally. But actually above that, there's this layer of saying, why have we gone to war against each other in the first place? Going into battle to balance the scales is one thing, but actually urging people to just get off the scales is kind of ultimately the goal. Yeah. And realizing, everyone's fighting a battle that you can't see, the sort of that saying, and it's true. And everyone is doing, not everyone, with very rare exceptions, everyone is doing everything they can to make it look easier than how it feels, right? every parent is trying to disguise from their children the challenges of the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Every husband, again, it's not literally every, but virtually every husband is trying to disguise from the family just how bad their day at work was. Every mum, her day at work, or whatever the challenges of the day may have been. And often feeling very undervalued and very unseen and very unappreciated by their kids, by their spouse or their partner, by their boss, by all the other people around them. And then they're jumping on social media and seeing the sanitized, beautified version of everyone else's lives and sitting there going, oh, why can't that be me? I just don't have what it takes. Well, neither does the person that you're envious of. They're faking it on social media. And so we are basically all universally in a very similar place of feeling like we work harder than people think we do more than people think we do, we're underappreciated, we're unseen, and taken completely for granted. Can we all just accept that that's the universal condition? And so when I say, ladies, expressing gratitude towards your man will transform your relationship, I'm not saying that he shouldn't also have gratitude towards you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the way the male psyche is built, gratitude is for us what love is for women.
Yeah.
Right? That's all I'm saying.
Basically, they're radical words today because, people don't realize that this sort of rhetoric doesn't emerge in a vacuum. This is a result of the conversation that's been held in the media, in politics for like the last 20, 30 years. Men are evil, men are toxic, men are bad. And I say this all the time, like if you let a man be a man and let a woman be a woman, it's beautiful. But of course, no, now everything needs to be analysed and dissected and, it happens to one person, therefore it must be the absolute for all people.
Yeah.
And I always try and speak in a general way, and I get picked up by people all the time going, well, that doesn't apply to me. I didn't do that. I'm like, I wasn't talking to you specifically.
It's not always about you, princess.
Correct.
Yeah.
And take what serves you, and what doesn't, it doesn't apply to you. I mean, we had a comment on the podcast the other day going, I don't find this interesting. I'm like,
okay,
I'm sorry it wasn't made for you, and I'm sorry that you think the world revolves around you.
And it's amazing that you took the time to make that comment. Just go and find something that interests you.
You had to make it about you, didn't you? And I think, there's a lot of things that I see that are happening. We've sort of put the self at the center. I'm the most important and everyone else revolves around me. My parents used to say that to me growing up, the world doesn't revolve around you.
Yeah.
And of course, as a kid, you think it does. And then you start to realize, oh, holy shit, like there's big bad world out there. And I'm
growing up is the process of realizing actually that the world revolves around me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you'd like
I'm glad you've matured like that. No, but this is a really interesting tightrope to walk because each of us is legitimately the main character of our own life. And that is not actually an untoward thing. When people cease to be the main character of their own life, they become incredibly passive, and that leads to its own raft of problems. So we do need to have a certain amount of assertiveness, a certain amount of willingness to leave a mark, to make an impression, to have things change as a result of us being there, because we are each legitimately the main character of our own lives. The problem becomes when someone says, I also ought to be the main character of your life too. And that's the narcissism and that self-centeredness that we've really bred into kids now, is not that they're stepping up and taking authority within their own lives. They want to have authority in yours.
Well, this is a good segue into our next topic about Aubrey Marcus, and I'll give you guys the rundown of that in a minute. But what I have noticed, I think this is radical feminism, and you might want to come for me for this. But what I think, when you've weaponized women to a point where all men are evil, everything is a faux pas, every, what do they call it? Micro discretions. Oh, that was a micro discretion. When he said that, that's the...
you mean microaggression or
microaggression, sorry.
Indiscretion?
Microaggression. Yeah, so that like that little slip was just like it was the beginning of the crevice into this deep, dark Machiavellian person that you're dating. And I saw this morning, actually, social media, this person had started a new account, and it was so interesting to me. It was all these photos that were, so this person, I don't know who it is, by the way, I wouldn't be able to find it even if I tried, but she's clearly a social media influencer.
Right. And
had this huge collection of photos of her and her partner flaunting their relationship. This like excessively expensive engagement proposal moment.
Yeah.
Travel around the world, luxury handbags, the Instagram lifestyle.
Yeah.
smiling for the camera. She's got that Instagram face. By that I mean like fillers, like over-contoured makeup, blonde hair, you know, super tight dresses, and he's always there smiling on her arm. And then so it's like a highlight reel, and then all these little things pop up. And they're screenshots of messages where he's been like, I should be treated better. I'm in this relationship on my own. You think everything's about you. Like all these supposedly negative messages. And I didn't read the comments, or I just looked at it and I went, hang on a minute. You are using what were good times, clearly good times, because you've taken the photo of it and you've used this on social media, and I can tell because they're all fucking filtered. And then you've now weaponized. So you've built your following up with this, oh my God, look at my lifestyle. It's so amazing. And that relationship's obviously come to its inevitable end. Now you're like, how do I still monetize this? Oh, I know. I'll go the other way. He was a narcissist and he bullied me and it was terrible. I honestly could not roll my eyes deeper into the back of my head. And knowing full well what I was up against when I went into the comments, like, oh, you know, I've been here too, blah, blah, blah. But then I was surprised, and I was so happy to see this. People going, hang on a minute, where are your text messages?
Yeah.
What did you say to him? Like, I need a bit more context. This doesn't sound terrible. It sounds like he felt like you weren't grateful. Yeah. Like that you were taking everything and he felt isolated.
Like you were the kind of person
abandoned.
that would use your relationship as the centerpiece of a Instagram account that's all about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than actually invest in the relationship for the sake of the relationship.
It was, I was literally, and I just sat up in bed. I was like, oh my God, there it is. The tables are turning. Like, thankfully, there was, and like, as I do, I always go click on the profiles because you're like, oh, the AI bots. No, I go and check. Yeah. And it was just refreshing. There wasn't a lot of it, but there was enough for me to be like,
not all is lost.
Not all is lost. I feel like
there
the tide is turning.
Of hope.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's fascinating. But
so radical monogamy. What's
okay,
going on
so
with
I'm
this?
going to tell you what happened just so I bring you guys up to speed because I like to have the facts.
I mean, have feminists just rediscovered the idea of...
No. So this is insidious, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk to you about this as a Christian. So just for anyone who's watching this for the first time, Topher is a Christian. I grew up in the Catholic school system. I know the Bible very well. I wouldn't call myself a Catholic by any stretch. Am I Christian? I believe in a God. I don't know what he's like. I met him in a psychedelic dream once, but, you know,
so
whatever.
Not Christian, but believing in the spirit realm.
I believe in an entity out there.
Yeah.
Who it is and what they do, I also like not knowing, to be honest.
Okay.
I respect not knowing. But I am someone who upholds those Judeo-Christian values. Okay. You know, simple. Yeah. You know, don't kill people.
Well, I mean, that's a good one. That's a good one.
The reason I give you that is because I have dipped my toe into the spiritual realm. And what I say the spiritual realm, and here I am defending myself before I've even talked about it.
Yeah, I genuinely have no idea what this topic is.
No. We'll go into it.
Like, I'm going in blind.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good one. So in the Catholic school system, as we know, they covered up a whole lot of bad misdeeds by the priests. Yes. One of those priests was at my school. Not when I was there, but when my brother was there. And he was a notorious pedophile. So as far as the Catholics, like Catholicism, I don't have any respect for it. And nothing will change my mind. Not to say that affects my opinion of God, but like as a, what do you call it? As an institution. As an institution, zero respect for me. Yeah. But where was I going with this? Sorry.
I can't help you.
I rebelled.
I can't help you.
Sorry, I rebelled. I knew I was going somewhere. What was I saying before about attention spans? Yeah. So I rebelled and I went down that sort of spiritual thing, you know, tarot cards and astrology and toying with that. And there was a big chunk of my life where I was single. And so what do you do when you're single and things aren't working out and you're dating and it's just constant disappointment? You start to look at reasons and you do all this self-development and then you get co-opted by spiritual stuff and you think, I need to be more feminine. I need to be more in tune with myself and I need to do all this. I need to do, affirmations in the mirror. It's embarrassing to admit I did it all because you sort of go through, and I went through that massive ego death. So there was a moment there where I really relied on the spiritual world to guide me to what I need to be. Right. And I dipped my toe into it. And then sure enough, after being sort of just like going down that rabbit hole just a little bit, I went, hang on a minute, this sounds like a cult. I don't like it. I'm out. And it is, right? So the reason I bring up Aubrey Marcus is this is someone who's like literally at the top of the totem pole. He is a spiritual guru. He's up there with Jay Shetty. He's up there with your Oprahs. Like he's that well known. Yeah, okay. But he's like super spiritual. Yeah. And so there's this now massive industry called the spirituality industrial complex. It is a billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, wow.
Ayahuasca ceremonies,
Yeah,
divine feminine, divine masculine,
Yeah,
like redefining this. And I honestly do think this has emerged because we've transitioned away from traditional religion.
Yeah, people are just trying to fill that void.
Yeah, so with all that context, Aubrey Marcus did a podcast recently. He has a very, very successful podcast. This is not someone that you've never heard of. This person is very well known.
He's actually someone that I've never heard of, and that's very rare these days. And
he's got a best-selling book. He's been on Joe Rogan, like all the things, right? Anyway, in his latest podcast, a new pattern of sacred relationships emerges, introducing the concept of radical monogamy, which he defines with spiritual advisor Dr. Mark Gaffini, who, by the way, molested a 13-year-old. Allegedly, as a deeper intentional commitment that balances personal freedom with sacred partnership. Aubrey and Vilena, that's his wife, have now included Alana Beale in their marriage, creating a kind of spiritual triad. They're not evolving relationships. This is emblematic of a broader spirituality industrial complex where vulnerable people, often burnout, disconnected or searching, are swept up in ideologies that promise connection but often deliver chaos, disillusionment and dependency. So this is not monogamy and it's not quite polyamory because it's now a triad. It's the two of them that were married and they've now included this very young woman into their fold. So now it's a three-way relationship. And this is being cloaked as like a divine union and sacred energy. And of course, in a ayahuasca ceremony, the goddess of Isis, who's an Egyptian god, because of course, has now told Aubrey to impregnate both women at the same time.
It's funny how it's always the bloke who gets that message, isn't it?
Isn't it interesting? It's always that. And the reason I thought this was worth talking about is we do have a lot of people who are disenfranchised with traditional means of religion for everyone's different, like everyone has different reasons as to why.
Sure.
We have a gaping hole. And through that gaping hole, I think politics, victim mentality, and these new ideologies have kind of replaced that hole.
Yeah.
Because humans desire connection.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, we're all searching for something.
And I think there is, I believe there is a spiritual world, and attempts to deny the existence of that are failing almost universally.
Yeah, like atheism and what's the other one? Agnostic.
Agnosticism, that still allows for the possibility of there being a God, but it's just not relevant.
Yeah.
But militant atheism, it's been quite interesting recently. I think there's a big shift away from atheism. More and more people are actually going, actually there is more.
I think atheism is demoralizing. You become going, what's the point?
I cannot. There is nothing that makes less sense to me than an atheist who still thinks that there's a purpose to life. That is just weird to me. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Firstly, let's start with the abuse of language. Radical monogamy. There is nothing monogamous about this. This is explicitly non-monogamous.
It's radical.
Okay, fine. Radical, I can live with. Monogamy. No, this is might call it radical marriage or radical relationships or radical polyamory or radical I'll put my dick wherever I want.
I will cheat and my wife will accept it.
That's right. There's lots of things you could call it, but monogamy is not one of them. Now, let me be very clear. You preface this with me being a Christian. God has given us the power to sin. Mm-hmm. He's given us instructions on how we ought to live. But he's also given us free will. And people can use that in whatever way they want. And I wouldn't want to see laws brought in or anything like that. And I know you're not advocating for that. People should be free to live however they want. But I actually think that sunlight is the best disinfectant here as it is everywhere else, where one of the reasons why cults can get away with being cults and kind of sucking people in, one of the first things that a cult will do is cut people off from outsiders. Why? Because if they heard other third-party opinions, if the sunlight got in, then they might see that.
And just to clarify that, when you're saying they cut people off, that's when they say you need to cut the spiritual cords. Yeah. You need to distance yourself from the person who caused the trauma in your life. You need to remove those toxic people. So that's step number one.
And they push them away from family, from their mum, their dad, their siblings, from childhood friends, all those people. They isolate.
Find your tribe. People. They bring you into the fold.
Yeah. And in their correct place, these can be healthy things. If you are a genuine victim of actual abuse, well, yes, distance is sometimes the correct solution there. Sometimes restitution can be made. Sometimes people can find a path towards healing and have a relationship, but sometimes distance is the answer. Finding your tribe can be an incredibly healthy thing. If you're a bit of a fish out of water, finding other people that kind of think like you can be incredibly rewarding and fulfilling and make life that much more enjoyable. So these as concepts are not automatically bad. But we,
they get weaponized.
Well, they get weaponized, and the pathway into a cult is a fairly well understood one. And yeah, it begins with getting you to cut off every other influence, and then gradually sucking more and more of your life into this vortex until you leaving will cost you everything.
Why is it always this like packaged rebellion that makes people feel like this is a new level, a new achievement unlocked, but it always centers around male sexual freedom?
Packaged rebellion. Sorry, can we come back to that for a second? Packaged rebellion. That is fascinating. That is fascinating. I'm going to bring that back to, it's just as a concept. Sorry, I'm playing in real time here. This might not.
I say packaged because it's presented in a way that sounds like consumable.
Okay, so one of the thought processes that I have pretty much continuously running in the back of my brain whenever I look at business, at opportunities, at communications, at politics and policy, anything, is which level am I looking at here? Am I looking at the manufacturing, at the package, at the distribution, or at the retail? And what I mean by that is, I am an ideas retailer. I'm the guy probably actually more an ideas distributor. I'm not the guy that does the research and publishes the papers. That's the idea manufacturer. I read those papers, consume them, integrate them into other elements of life and how they kind of the threads fit together, and then I will release a video about that. That probably isn't full retail. Full retail would be more consumable. I'd probably need to head in that direction, but I'm distributing these ideas. I'm kind of that middle layer to the interested parties that are actively seeking me, who then hopefully retail those ideas out over the barbecue and over the dinner table and so forth. This concept of manufacturing, distribution, and retail applies to literally absolutely everything in life. So when you say packaged rebellion, what I hear is retail rebellion. Rebellion that's been turned into a retail product. And the reason why this matters, so let's take a business opportunity and just talk strict business for a second, but this is absolutely relevant culturally, in ideas, in cults, in rebellion, in everything. Your opportunity for profit is directly related, correlates directly to how underdeveloped the opportunity is. If you are joining a multi-level marketing company, it's a retail opportunity. All of the money's being made by somebody else, right? It's being packaged the crap out of, and it's being marketed to you, and there's a person who's going to sit there and explain it to you exactly how it works, and it's glossy brochures. It's a retail opportunity. The profit's already gone for most people. As you move down away from retail towards a distribution type opportunity, which is one that doesn't come to you nicely pre-packaged, but you're taking something that someone else has already made and you're finding ways to get it out into the marketplace. You've got to do more. It doesn't come to you as nicely packaged, but also there's a lot of work being already done by others. Then you come down to the lowest layer, which is the person where there's nothing. And they're fabricating something out of nothing. That's where your biggest opportunities lie. That's where that person that can walk onto a block of land and see something that just doesn't exist right now, not just a building, but a whole business, a whole idea, a whole concept. A packaged rebellion, retail rebellion, people who sell rebellion in a pre-packaged form is a concept I've not given thought to previously.
Would you say I'm correct, though? I think this is what it is.
I think you're spot. The only reason I stopped and went, hold up, is because I think you're spot.
I said something smart.
And I'm going to have to mull on that for a little while.
Well, this is what I am someone who's always been not an early adopter. I'm an innovator. I'm always I'm not saying this to brag. It's just, that's just where I fall. I'm someone that sees something
you're the guinea pig
in the seed form, and I'm curious. I guess that's what it is. And as someone who sort of is that black sheep, I get interested in things that no one else has jumped on yet. And I guess to a point, I am the person that once everyone adopts it, I'm like, I'm bored now.
Not interested.
You know, but there's something about being the first, and it's happened multiple times in my life. And I saw this popping up, and this has obviously caused a massive storm online, people arguing for and against and saying, oh, it's so brave, and then other people going, this is just like another form of cult, whatever. And what I see now, and I'm seeing this as like business opportunities for the right, and this is something that I'm fearful of, which is why I like talking about it, is that we've spent the last 10 years demonizing progressive ideology and pointing out to its shortfalls. which means we've created somewhat of a vacuum for right-leaning things to now do the exact same thing because that's no longer trendy.
And this is what Douglas Murray and others are trying to warn against, I think very clumsily so. I think the way that they've gone about that's really poor. But the fundamental point is not necessarily incorrect, that now that the pendulum is swinging, there is opportunity for narcissists, for would-be cult leaders, etc., to just switch sides and go, oh, everybody come over here.
Yes. And that's what I'm really seeing, right? So we're now getting people like Aubrey Marcus, and the reason it matters is he is massive. This guy has pull. And I mean, I don't know, I'm always like really sus on anyone that gets up and claims spiritual guru-ness. It just instantly puts me off. Very dangerous, but also back to your point that I cut you off in order to go down my little rabbit hole. Tangent time. I know we're back on the mainstream now. Excuse me. Why does it always come back to having sex, and particularly men being put in a position being
of
able
power
to have multiple
with a
women.
harem essentially of women? I don't know why that is. I don't know why women fall for it.
I can tell you why women fall for it.
Okay.
I feel like, and this comes back to what we were talking before about men versus women. Again, honestly, this is my 30,000-foot view, and you guys can disagree with me in the comments.
Sure.
It is so simple to me that the more we have allowed other people to weigh in on our personal experiences with zero context to who we are, the more we've given that power, that it disempowers what we know to be true based on our firsthand experience. Okay. So somehow, I hate saying it was social media. I think social media is a big part of it. Bearing witness to the intricate details of other people's lives has now made us question our own, whereas before we didn't have that access. So what's normal to me now looks weird because I see what looks to be normal to someone else, and they're telling me that's normal.
Or at the very least what they are asserting is normal.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so things that I'll give you an example just to make it a little bit dark, because why not? I grew up in a home where 9 times out of 10, it was great. But that 10th time was domestic violence. Yeah. Now, I didn't know that at the time. I thought my mum grabbing my hair and throwing me around the room and my dad smacking me across the face was normal. Yeah. It's only now, as an adult, having conversations with other people going, hey, Carly, that's not normal. That's not how your parents are meant to treat you. And I'm like, didn't know. But, and sure, okay, that's great to know now. I'm armed with that information. But now it's going the opposite way. For example, I'm in a very happy, healthy relationship. Sure. But if I go and watch this other little side of Instagram where I'll give you that reel I just told you about, this is terrible. This is the signs that this guy's an abuser. This is the sign. So now I'm going to well, not me, but the average person might go, oh, well, my partner says that to me. Yeah. Maybe that is bad. Yeah. So what you have is giving people, everyone feels really vulnerable now because they no longer know which way is up. Yeah. And their compass is no longer pointing north. And this is kind of the relationship version of people in the freedom movement that have gotten overly excited about red shoes, or people who put their hands like this, or they published a picture. Come to me. Yeah. They published yes, exactly, right? All the things. And so what you do is you take something that's actually very, very common. So people who do media training will often, if they're nervous about their hands, which is a very common thing for people to be unsure of, what do I do with my hands? You give them something to do. Well, these days it's kind of moved to that, but for a long time it was this. All the way through the 90s, all the media training was you do this with your hands. That's if you don't know what to do with your hands, do that. And so then all it takes is for someone who just wants clicks and just wants a bigger following on the internet to be able to monetize, to go, hey, there's this thing that lots of world leaders are doing. I happen to have noticed it. Let's just say that it's a sign that they're members of the Illuminati, and I'll build an entire Facebook page around that and build an entire movement around that. Red shoes being another one, all this other sort of stuff. This is essentially, it's the exact same psychology being tapped into here. What's this red shoes thing? Are you referring to red sneakers? What does this mean?
Red sneakers, red shoes being apparently a proof that you're in the Masons. Huh. That's the thing.
I would just say you have poor taste.
Well, that too. But all they're doing is they're taking regular, normal, everyday, ordinary things, attaching an extraordinary meaning to them, and then they can gather an audience on that basis. Oh, because we're in the know. We're the ones that really know the truth.
Well, just to call that out, I mean, that's something that happens to you and I all the time. Like when we went to ARC, we were ASIO agents, and I'm like, you guys have such amazing imaginations.
I know. It's great, isn't it?
But, what?
Can I tell you a story?
Are you now what?
It's going to completely hijack the conversation.
Do it. Tangent time.
Okay, tangent time. Okay. I had a conversation
Ow, I just punched the desk.
Within the last week with someone who will remain completely nameless, and they are anonymous. They're just a random person. I wouldn't even know where to find them again, but I met them and I chatted with them. And they told me the story of how they survived during COVID. And their particular line of work required them to have the jabs, and they were resolute that they were not going to do it. But also their family situation meant that was a pretty serious thing if they lost their job. That was going to be a pretty tenuous thing for people that they loved. So they decided, this is what I'm just going to tell you the story as he told it to me.
Tell me, I'm listening.
Decided that he was going to pay a homeless person to take the jab for him.
Oh.
So he found a homeless person that he'd seen regularly enough. He's like, oh yeah, okay. Went and had a chat and said, listen, $500 to take the first one for me, because he'd found out, he'd done his research. He'd found out that all he needed was a Medicare card. I think it was Medicare card as an identifier. So like, if I give you my Medicare card, you go in there, you get the jab. When you come back out with the proof that you've had the jab, I'll give you $500. So the guy goes in and he's gone for nearly an hour. And the guy who paid him is out there like, what if he's just carked it? What if he's been given it and he's just keeled over? And right now, my family's getting a phone call and I'm being listed as deceased, and now I'm going to have... He's catastrophizing all of this. I thought, that would be a brilliant short film. Like, as a premise for a short film, that would be just fantastic. Well, the guy emerged, and then a little while later, he goes and finds him again. It's time for the second shot. And he was really worried about this guy ratting him out. He was like, if this comes out, I'm toast. Like this is, and you remember the fear. Obviously, you experienced it. If someone was found to have been doing that, can you imagine the headlines? And anyway, so he's like, I got to lay it on thick for this guy to make sure he never tells anyone. So he's like sharing his like, this is my family situation. This is why this is so important. Oh man, we're really stretched, and I'm trying to set up, this and this, and I just, it's just really hard for me. And what he'd said to the guy originally was that he would pay him $500 for the first shot and $1,000 for the second shot. And apparently this homeless guy's like, listen, that sounds like things are really tough for you. I'm happy to take the second shot for just $500 if that helps. And so he laid it on so thick for this guy that this homeless guy is like, it's all right, mate. I'll give you a discount on taking this shot in my arm.
Jesus. That's a story.
And he assures me you paid him the grand. So that was how he navigated that particular moment in history. Yeah. But just that idea of the switching identities, the guy goes in to take the shot. What if he drops?
I bet you there's a million of those stories. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors through COVID. And you know how they said that we had 90% vaccine rate? Yeah. That is bullshit. Yeah. And I know this unequivocally just based on...
Yeah, anecdotes.
Things that may or may not have occurred, all allegedly.
Exactly.
I'm probably just making it up.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, so just to round out the Aubrey thing, I think there is currently a real vacuum and this insatiable need felt collectively to have something to attach yourself to.
Yeah.
And identity politics is no longer cool. The trans movement is on its way out. What's next? And I think spiritualism is it, because it is attracting all these gurus and they're making bank.
Oh, yeah.
Jay Shetty is an absolute charlatan, and he's worth millions, and he was a monk allegedly, but yet no one is able to identify when.
Any of it, yeah. So this is kind of where I get a little bit like, I'm not the idiot whisperer. God has given you permission to ruin your life. You can do that if you wish. I hope for everyone's sake that after having done that, you then come back to God and actually find the real thing. But I can't save anyone from ruining their lives.
Just to throw myself under the bus, because why not?
Sure.
I love tarot cards. Now, and a lot of people take tarot cards as like witchy poo, like fortune telling. It's not. It's it's actually the total opposite. Tarot cards are just there to help you like organize your thoughts. So you have the major arcana, which is 22 cards of major milestones that happen to every single person through their life. Right. Ego, death, birth, love, blah. And then you have under that the other cards, and I think it's like 44 or something like that, that are minor arcana, which are stages and steps and challenges and opportunities that are very, very much like part of the human experience.
Sure.
You have your majors and your minors, right? And so if you're facing a really sort of difficult question in your life or a crossroads, what do I do next? How do I do it? And you're going around and you're ruminating and you're not able to come up with any like clear decision. You might go and speak to 10 people and then just get even more confused. But there's this wonderful thing that we have called we still have agency. We still have that ability to free will, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're dealing with tarot cards, and whether you're having them read for you, you're doing it yourself, there is your intuition that instantly kicks in when you get an answer you don't want. So like I'll give you like layman's. Should I have this relationship with this guy? And you get a bunch of cards and it says no, this person's bad for you. But instantly you're like, oh, but he's right for me. You just got your answer.
Yeah.
All it is helping you tune back into.
So you're using it like a magic 8-ball.
Basically, yeah. Because you want, what you want, but you doubt yourself, right? And you doubt yourself because you're listening to either a bunch of noise in your own head or a bunch of noise around you. And so that's kind of what tarots are for. And I actually think they're really beautiful. I don't think they have anything to do with the spiritual realm. There is no person going, I'm going to magically put that card on the top of the deck so when she flips it over and then I don't think it's not that deep.
There are a lot of people that use it that way.
That's what I mean. It's been co-opted.
And there's certainly a lot of people that make money out of it.
There's a lot of symbolism in it. And I think that for the most part, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm not a skeptic. I have a friend who is a spiritual medium, and I do believe he's real. That's what I say. I put my toe into it. I do think some people have the ability to be in two realms at the same time. Because you believe in heaven, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I look at a lot of those things like tarot cards, and I go, I don't know, but I have no need for that in my life, and I know there's a lot of people that are using things like tarot cards and they are actively and actually consciously serving Satan. And they're actually, you can actually talk to them and say, so what do you do? Well, you've got this club, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we're Satanists and we do these things and we observe these festivals and these seasons and da-da-da. So there is no question in my mind. Well, for me, there's no question. There is a heaven, there is a hell, there is a God, there is a Satan, there is a spiritual realm. And I actually am of the opinion that the spiritual realm is far more active than Westerners tend to be aware of.
I agree.
I think there's a lot more going on in us and around us and through us and between us. I recently went away for a couple of days on a men's camp, and that was actually as part of a thing called Wild at Heart. It's what's his name? I'll think of his name shortly. But he's got a beautiful way of describing the world from a Christian perspective. He says, you were born into a love story set in a world at war. The love story is a father's love. That's God's love for each and every one of us, as he wants to have reconciliation with us. The war is Satan trying to claim us and take us away from our Father and not allow that reconciliation to happen. So we were born into a love story that is set in a world at war. But most of that war is happening actually beyond human eyes. Yeah. The war is happening in that spiritual realm. And from that point of view, I don't want to dabble in things that I'm not confident that I understand. Yeah. What are the spiritual implications of this? And I might go into something, and even the Apostle Paul talks about this in the book of Romans and elsewhere. He talks about the role of conscience. And he says, as just one of the illustrations, he says, you might be able to eat meat that's been sacrificed to idols, because that was a big issue at the time. They had a lot of false gods, a lot of idols, and they'd do sacrifices and have feasts with meat that's been sacrificed to these idols.
Or they'd throw young virgins into fire pits.
That too, but he wasn't discussing that. He's saying you might be able to eat meat that's been offered to idols in it with a clean conscience, because you recognize that God made that in the first place. This is God's universe. That was God's animal, and it doesn't matter that it's been claimed by somebody else. No, that's the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And so you might be able to sit there and go, I can eat that with a clean conscience. But another weaker Christian might sit there and go, oh, but that's been sacrificed to idols. You can't do that. And so you actually wound their conscience. You compromise or they might copy you and go, okay, well, he's eating it, so I'll eat it too, but they don't actually have the theological understanding. Yeah. And so you harm them in that process. So for those two reasons, number one, if I don't fully understand it, I'm not going to dabble in it, because I think there's a lot more going on than what we acknowledge.
I agree.
And number two, even if I do understand it, it doesn't automatically mean that I will. Now, an exception to that is something like civil disobedience. There's a lot of Christians out there whose consciences are offended by my civil disobedience, and I get challenged on that all the time. What about what Paul said? And my response is yes, but I reached the threshold where to not disobey would have offended my conscience. Yeah. I wasn't doing it as a matter of, because I can, because my theology allows me to. I was doing it because it was a matter of, if I don't do this, I will have sinned before God. My conscience will not allow me not to do this. So there's a lot in that. But for me, things like tarot cards, all that sort of stuff, I do think there is a spiritual element to it. And even if I didn't, I wouldn't touch it purely on the basis that so many people do believe there's a spiritual element to it, that I just don't want to have anything to do with it.
Well, to bring it back to my PTSD therapy that I had with psilocybin,
Yeah.
I can't articulate what I saw, you know, and like I've never been high before other than.
This is when you were Anubis.
Yes, when I was Anubis, but I think I did it 4 or 5 times. I can't remember. And progressively, like once your imagination's open, or like so it's not your imagination. That's the wrong way to say it. Your subconscious is open. You access things that like I've never read a book that explained this to you. I've never seen a movie. Like these are thoughts that are coming into my head that come from somewhere. And when I think I talked about this on an earlier podcast, you guys can go find it. I talked about seeing entities that I didn't recognize.
Yeah.
So when you're going through this subconscious experience, you know, you somehow know, like you unequivocally know what you're looking at, but you have no context for it. So when I say entities, like the best thing I can say is alien. And I don't mean like the big head, skinny bodies.
Yeah.
I mean, they're alien in the sense that there's nothing I've seen before that I can be like, well, it looks like this.
Yeah.
They're entities that have appeared, that spoke and did things. And it's interesting because when we talk about the spiritual realm, I have no idea what heaven looks like. And God, how did we get into this massive topic all of a sudden? Talk about depth of this podcast.
Yeah.
But like when you see things like that, or you know, I've had a near-death experience. Talk to anyone who's had a near-death experience. You come out of it going, yeah, no, there's a realm that there's something.
There are some people that haven't. So, for example, Kerry Packer, he had a heart attack. And he was brought back only because the ambulance that came to his place actually happened to be one of the very few ambulances at the time that had the defibrillator. And he actually paid for every ambulance to have a defibrillator, and they became known as Packer-whackers because they'd been...
That's great. Packer-whackers.
Packer-whackers.
Clear.
But he came out of that, and his claim was there's nothing there. Right, so there are people that will have a near-death experience, and he was touch and go, and he came out and went, yeah, there's nothing there, and yet there are others who, like you say, will come out and
there's
go,
ether.
It's got to be, there's God, or there's this, or there's
the
that.
thing I learned, or the thing that stood out to me the most, like I saw a lot, and you go through this thing for like 4 or 5 hours, and you metabolize the psilocybin, and you sort of come out. And then it comes again in another wave and you go back in.
Yeah, right.
And if there's resistance there, you have a bad experience. But if you're guided and it's open and you feel safe, you just let yourself go. And when I say the ether, again, I don't necessarily have the right words. I'm using what I know. It's a blackness. There is a thing there. There is a void. There is God. And what I took out of it was the only thing that has meaning is what exists right now. Right? So this life that I have is the most amazing thing. This is where all the meaning is. Take it, enjoy it, embrace it, and live it to the best that you can. Because on the other side, when you're in the ether waiting to come back, be reborn, whatever your next, wherever your soul goes to next, it's not, the meaning is now. And that's what, like, I know I'm not explaining this very well.
All I would say is it sounds to me like whatever
He's looking at me with 3 heads.
No, I would say whatever you encountered was not God.
Okay.
Because that kind of presentism is not in Christian theology. Christian theology and really most meaning actually comes from prioritizing later. I can't remember who it was that said that, but there's someone in the comments will remind me.
So prioritizing the afterlife.
Well, so if you want to have a better life, you need to make sacrifices now in order to build towards that. It's the priority of later. So the priority of now is hedonism, and Satan loves to bring people into that. It's all about the now. Just enjoy it, pleasure, blah, blah, blah. Don't think about tomorrow. Well, why doesn't he want you to think about tomorrow? Well, because he doesn't want you to think about what's there waiting for you tomorrow. The most of human happiness actually comes from making decisions now that prioritize later.
Delayed gratification.
And that includes Christianity and the belief in the afterlife and that by being in Christ and being forgiven for our sins that we'll make it to heaven. But I would suggest to you that whatever you've encountered certainly is not on, assuming the Christian worldview is correct, they're not bringing you towards God, they're bringing you away.
I see it differently.
Okay.
But I see this because I'm someone who's gone extensively into the ancient Egyptians.
Sure.
And the ancient Egyptians prioritized the afterlife over everything. So much so that you would mummify everyone and put all the organs into canopic jars. And they had a Book of the Dead. And they believed that in the afterlife that held the most value. You're familiar with Dante's Inferno?
Yeah.
I saw Dante's Inferno when I was going through that psilocybin journey, and I saw what it looked like. And you see all the sinners. You see all the different levels of sinners. You see all the different levels of depravity and hedonism and degeneracy. And what I experienced was a peace in the sense that you need to have something to aim for, yes, but withholding your ability to experience who you are meant to be is actually to your detriment. The best bit of advice I feel like I've ever gotten is at the end of your life, you will be faced with the version of you that you could have been, and you will see how much you fell short. Sorry. And I don't know why. I've never been able to make peace with that in my head. I'm like, oh my God, if I've got all this untapped potential that I'm not reaching for, that like sends me wild. And that's probably why I'm as ambitious as I am. I think Satan, or, you know, the opposite, or the worst thing that could happen to you is to settle into mediocrity and going, this good enough is okay.
Well, see, I actually agree with that sentiment, but I view it very much through a Christian worldview, which is a part of our journey into heaven is going to include a revelation of all of what we kind of missed out on, all the things that we could have tapped into.
That'd kill me.
All the grace.
Although I'd already be dead.
All of the grace that God had for us that we chose not to accept, or we chose not to step into, or we let fear hold us back, or these various things. I think upon arriving in heaven, we're going to have a revelation of what could have been.
Did you guys think you were coming in for a theology podcast or what?
Well, there you go. I mean, we're just talking about life, and this
this
is part
is
of
the
life. I
thing.
mean, these are the conversations we need to have.
And I think the reason that so many people are depressed, anxious, sad, you know, like leaning into nihilism is because they don't believe that there's something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's worrisome. And for me, that's something else. I don't define it in the Christian sense. Yeah. So sorry for Topher's followers who are Christian.
Oh, there's lots of them that aren't.
I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just literally explaining my own journey and where I'm at.
Yep.
And even though I wouldn't say I'm a Christian or practicing Christian, I still believe in being the best version of myself and holding myself to a high standard. And I do see this now, and this is going to be a segue into the Diddy stuff.
Fun.
That this broader appeal and this now broader acceptance of degeneracy, of hedonism, of this like sexual revolution that I actually think is designed to bleed us of anything of meaning, you know,
connection.
I actually think it's really destructive. And, you know, we're seeing a massive collapse of an entire system of power, protection, and money. And Diddy is like, yeah, okay, Diddy's a rapper or whatever, but he's just the fall guy, I think. Yeah. What this represents is that won't hold up anymore. People don't want that anymore. This like cultural gatekeeping where if you want to succeed in this world, if you want to reach those heights in your career across the entertainment industry, you must partake in this. Yeah. And I think what we're seeing is this unraveling, and it's honestly, it's a patchwork quilt. This is going to take a long time for it all to make sense.
And a lot of people that should go down are not going to go down.
And of course they won't, because we might get a few. These are the real power brokers. Yeah. Diddy's just the face.
What it's doing though is it's giving me a refreshed respect for people that I already had respect for, but the likes of Kevin and Sam Sorbo. I met Sam at ARC and have, you know, since was invited to stay at their home, and they got me into Mar-a-Lago for a fundraising event for Donald Trump and some really fun stuff. But as I got to know their story a little bit better, so Kevin Sorbo, for those that may know the name but not be able to put a face to it, he played Hercules in the Xena
I
Warrior
loved,
Princess.
that show growing up.
As Hercules in the Hercules show. He was Hercules, and all of a sudden he dropped off the radar. He just kind of disappeared. And all of a sudden he's doing these sort of niche B-grade movies and so forth. That's because he and his wife left Hollywood. They walked away from it all. And they moved across the country and they started working with small independent studios and independent films. And they're starting to get some traction now. And they've kind of pioneered a new way of making movies outside of the Hollywood cult, I would say. And that was because of the depravity that they saw. It was because of the gatekeeping. They're sitting there going, we can't, even though we won't participate in that, can we in good conscience participate in an industry that is putting young women especially, but also young men, through these kinds of initiations and
they're like humiliation rituals. You know, I look at it and you can identify the most popular female entertainers. They've all done something where they've danced around like the devil. Or they always go through a point where, like, I think of Mariah Carey all the time. Her story is really interesting, and I don't want to go too deep into one celebrity, but Mariah Carey, like, that voice is one in a generation, right? Like, no one sings like apart from maybe Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
Mariah Carey, when she came onto the scene, used to wear beautiful evening gowns, had that long curly hair, sang power ballads, right? And then she was dating Tommy Mottola, who was the head of Sony, and he was the power broker. He ran the industry. And then she released All I Want for Christmas and the Christmas album. And then something happened. The marriage broke down, or maybe she wanted to get away from his grasp. And then she released her first single, and away from Tommy, which was Fantasy. No, it wasn't Fantasy. It was gold cover. God, what was it called? Honey. She's on the back of a jet ski. She's got a butt out. She's in a bathing suit, and she sexified herself.
Yeah. Okay.
And then she went down that R&B pop sort of ballady thing, and then she never did like a big ballad really again. And then until later years, and then she did a couple of others. But there seems to be this like, the woman pops, and this happens to men too, but I'm particularly interested in the woman. These Disney starlets, your Miley Cyruses, your Demi Lovato's, your Britney Spears, all of them, Christina Aguilera, they are talented. I'm not taking away from their talent. They have got an amazing voice. They come out with their breakthrough album. They're all innocent and cute. That's how they introduced to us. Britney Spears, innocent. Christina Aguilera, innocent. And then something happens where all of a sudden they come out in arseless chaps. They come out with like skanky clothes or a skanky song or I'm a slave for you or dirty, right? And then that becomes their breakout album. That's the one where we're like, wow, this is them for who they are. They've like let go of the shackles. Right?
Yeah.
And then what happens, and it like, I'm not making this up, guys. Go and do a deep dive and try and draw a timeline. That album comes out where they're throwing the shackles of Disney off and, they felt repressed because of Disney or they felt repressed because of this. And they go out and do those albums. And then what happens? Their entire life falls to chaos.
Yeah.
Just like breakdown of key relationships.
Yep.
They get alienated from their family and their loved ones.
Yep.
They go into substance abuse. There's rehab installments. Mental health issues. Yep. They'll shave their hair off. They come out with this new identity. They come out with a bunch of albums that suck. And then some of them, thankfully, are able to come out the other end.
Yeah.
But it's happened to Amanda Burns. It's happened to Demi Lovato. It's happened to Christina Aguilera. It's happened to Britney Spears. This is like a recipe for disaster. And I don't want to say it's Diddy, but like when you line up a lot of this stuff, it's when they get released to that back door of Hollywood where the hedonism is, where all the substance is, and goes, you want it? Come on in. And if you're willing to let your guard down, you get given all that stuff, but you can't sustain it, right? And then you get chewed up.
But behind the people that we see are the producers, the agents, the reps, the deal makers that actually really, they get to decide because there's a lot more.
Well, they're the ones making the money.
And there's a lot more talented people than just the ones that make it. There's an awful lot of equally, or I'm sure amongst them, more talented people that never made it because they never were willing to to do the deals with the devil. It's an exceptionally exploitative industry and it runs on control. You want to, if you're an agent, you want to have that talent locked down so that they can't go to another agent. If you're a label,
they put them in those 10 album deals or something.
Yeah, correct. The labels are especially infamous for this. They'll put them in deals that are impossible to fulfill so that the artist will inevitably be in breach of contract. And at that point, the label has complete control.
And they've signed their life away.
They can exploit them. They can push them to breaking point. They can throw them in the dustbin and owe them nothing. And the entire industry is built on that. And so these young kids come up. I mean, you think about there's some songs that kind of give you a glimpse into it.
He's going to try and recall a pop song. It'll be from the 70s. No. Wait for it. Wait for it.
No, it's not.
There was this song, California Dreaming.
The butterflies fly away. Goodness me. They're playing my song. You know the song.
Keep going.
They're playing my song. The butterflies fly away. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, I think I know the song, but what's this got to do with anything?
Okay, so that's a song about
Miley Cyrus.
The optimism of arriving in Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh, it's Party in the USA.
Party in the USA, okay?
Oh,
and
God.
There's this optimism there.
Yeah.
Now, but she is also harking back to the life outside of Hollywood. She's like, I'm here, I'm excited, I'm thrilled to be here. Oh, I don't fit in. There's all these rules. I didn't get the memo about the stilettos and so on and so forth. And,
I never thought a day would come where you quote Miley Cyrus.
The nostalgia. Well, I talked about Miley Cyrus the other couple of podcasts ago as well as, all that innocent,
we learn
sweet,
more each episode.
She's my secret crush. She's my
Is she?
No.
Your hall
not
pass?
at all. She's my hall pass. No.
Dude, she's 20 years younger than you.
That's the point of a hall pass, isn't it? No.
Midlife crisis
not the
is
case.
inevitable.
That is not the case at all. I don't think it's 20 years, maybe 10, maybe 15. Anyway, so there are songs that give us a glimpse into this juxtaposition, but that progression that you mentioned, and it happens with men as well. Look at Sam Smith, and he's by no means the only example. I think that the gatekeepers essentially want you to sell your soul. You have to give them control.
Yeah.
And if you keep doing that for long enough, you're going to end up in a pretty desperate place, and you're going to end up taking the drugs and doing the deals.
Well, I mean, the stories of Whitney Houston, for example, how she got addicted to crack cocaine and heroin. Like, again, another once-in-a-generation voice.
Yep.
Michael Jackson.
Yep.
You know, like you see what real success actually asks you to sacrifice. It's got nothing to do with talent. It really doesn't. And you see this, like, you know, remember we went through that massive decade of reality TV, and it was like singer shows, Voice and whatever the other one was.
Idol and all
and
that.
there would be like genuinely incredible vocalists on there. You're like, damn, like why aren't you famous? And then they never quite make it.
Yeah.
Like a guy, Sebastian, he's a Christian man.
Yeah.
He's big in his lunchbox here, but he'd never make it in Hollywood. I think he's tried.
Yeah, he went to America. I mean, look, for every superstar, there's 1,000 journeymen, and he's in the journeyman category.
And by the way, I'm not saying he's not a good vocalist. He's amazing.
Yeah, but he never became a Justin Bieber or.
But why not? Don't think he had what it took?
In that specific case, and I mean no offense, I actually happen to know people that know him very well. In his particular case, no, I don't think he was of that caliber. He wasn't a Justin Timberlake. He wasn't in that.
He didn't have the star power.
But there are plenty of people that do have the star power that never make it, because they're not willing to make the deals. And I suspect that there are many people, Justin Bieber is an interesting example right now. You had that photo of him looking pretty gaunt the other week, and I'm a little bit, I'm not sure with him.
Oh, he's definitely on a substance abuse spiral.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't follow it that closely, so I could very easily be wrong. But, there's a lot of questions around what happened with Diddy. He was being given houses, he was being given cars, he couldn't even drive yet, and Diddy was giving him a car, and all this, these videos come out, and obviously
it's a hazing thing.
With what we know about Diddy now, it's really freaking creepy. I mean, it was pretty weird back then, but it's really freaking creepy now. But that's not to say necessarily that Justin Bieber sold his soul. It's to say that Diddy was trying to get leverage, trying to get control, trying to make it. It's like a cult.
Get them to buy in.
If you leave, you'll lose all of this stuff. You'll lose everything. You have to stay in now. So it's not necessarily that Justin Bieber has necessarily participated in anything or necessarily been a victim. There's a lot of debate about him at the moment. I don't know one way or the other.
Yeah.
But Diddy was trying to get control.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the interesting thing about this is the celebrity worship era is done. I don't think you'll ever see an era in our lifetime where someone can be a Beyonce again. I think that era, there are people who are coming up, but to be a multi-generational artist, to have a chokehold on pop culture, I don't think we'll see that for a while.
I think there's a lot more competition now, which is going to fragment the audience.
Well, there is, but I also think that, it's no longer considered aspirational, because you look at what happens when these people reach this height of success and you wanted to emulate that. And then now, again, I always bring back to social media. Now that you can see behind the veil, it's like, actually, these people are gross. Really? I'll give you an example. I've photographed.
And then we're going to have to move on.
Okay. We'll tie this into the next topic.
All right.
I've been to many very wealthy people's homes. Some people who are wealthy, but you wouldn't know their name, but they have real wealth.
Yep.
Their houses are immaculate. They're well organized. They're well structured. Everything's taken care of. It's a beautiful home. I've been into the homes of celebrities, and it's decay, and it's dirty, and it's messy. And the reason I bring up that distinction is, I think if you live a life out in the open like that, and you're part of the celebrity culture, you never have a chance to develop yourself because you're developing in the public eye. So you're developing in a way that makes you marketable, but you don't ever get a chance to develop your character as a individual. You become a commodity, and you buy into that commodity, and you buy into your own ego. And then what happens is you get a bunch of like Peter Pan syndrome people.
Sure.
Right. And I think the average person now, thanks to, again, social media, thanks to the democratization of e-commerce, you can now get wealth for yourself without having, you don't have to be a celebrity anymore. And you've seen this now, like there's a new wave of social media superstars who are driving around their Porsches and the Lamborghinis with their big houses, but they didn't have to go through that Hollywood buy-in. And I think now young people look at that and go, well, now I just have to be a content creator.
Yeah, I'll just do that. And amongst them, there's going to be good ones and bad ones, and people that make it that deserve it, and people that don't make it that probably deserved it but just never quite had that break. And all of that will play out. But it's the gatekeepers have been disempowered, which is a wonderful thing.
Would you say from, again, that 30,000 foot view, with all of these systems that are like being eroded right now and collapsing, that we are going through like a revolution of types?
I refer to it as the revolution of decentralization.
Okay.
I won't harp on this for long. But in every single area, entertainment's the obvious one. We just talked about that. The gatekeepers of Hollywood have been disempowered by the decentralization of the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Now there's TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all these other things. But actually, technologically, the same thing's happening. So let me come back to infrastructure. It used to be if you wanted electricity and telephone lines and so forth, you had to live near other people. You had to go to where the infrastructure was because it was centralized. This was monolithic stuff that was incredibly expensive, often government run and administrated, and you had to go to where the people were in order to get the services. Now, if someone has some money to set it up in the first place, because it's not cheap yet, but it exists, you can now live in the middle of nowhere and you can just pay and have installed your solar panels and maybe a windmill or two, some batteries, some air, some water purification stuff from a local stream or from a bore, or even just sapping water out of the atmosphere these days. If you've got enough money, you can literally do that. And you can have communication and internet that is as fast or faster than what people in the city are going to get through Starlink. And you can now live a completely decentralized life. In theory, you can live a life with just as many services and mod cons on a yacht as what
Sounds
you used
amazing.
to
How do I get that?
Yeah, I know, exactly. You just got to have a lot of money. And so decentralization is becoming possible, but this is happening not just with infrastructure, it's happening across the board. Decentralization is now happening because people can move between jurisdictions much more easily.
Yeah.
And so if I don't like the tax laws here in Australia or the way that Australia is going, it's easier than it's ever been in history for me to go, okay, you know what, I'm moving to Cyprus or I'm moving to the Caribbean or I'm going to do something about this. The mobility and the opportunity with technology to live lives that are better without the need for the proximity, right, is happening now. And without the having to go through the gatekeepers is happening now. So it is a revolution. It's a revolution of decentralization. This has never happened before in history.
Yep.
That you can live with just as much convenience remotely as what you could in a highly populated urban centre.
Yeah.
So we're in uncharted territory there, and it's going to happen in terms of jurisdictional competition between governments. Yep. I think we're going to see more states being created in Australia within my lifetime. I think that's going to happen.
Interesting.
I think mobility between states and countries is going to increase over time, not decrease. And decentralization away from urban centres, I think urban centres are going to become traps for people that depend on government infrastructure, which is still going to be centralised. And everyone that's not dependent on government is going to be seeking to move away from those areas. And we will see the urban blight that is already happening in the US happening here.
Interesting. Okay. Well, to round out this podcast, because we have been going a little bit longer than I realised. Good chats though.
Good chats. I've really enjoyed this.
Good
and
chat.
There's a couple of conversations that okay, that'll just be a part of that conversation. I'm sure that will continue over future episodes.
It'll pop up.
Yeah.
Okay, so couple of quick ones. Elon Musk has backed off from Doge.
Yeah, people are making a massive deal out of this. He was only ever a special government employee, which limits how long he can work, and so he's backing away from that. The big news here is that what Doge has proved is that Doge is not enough.
Yeah.
Because with all of what they've done, the debt is still growing.
Yeah.
So we need to see President Trump, have a reality check and just go full Javier Milei. And if he doesn't, then I'm sorry, but the US is doomed. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, okay. I find it interesting too. Like Elon is an innovator. He was never meant to be there for the whole maturitization of Doge.
Yeah, and he never promised that he would be. He's stated now that his focus is on getting back into the private sector and creating efficiencies and technologies that will grow GDP, because that is one of the other ways to potentially overcome the federal debt, not without an enormous amount of inflation, which is going to impoverish the country anyway, but it is a potential pathway out. So he's switching his focus there.
Yeah. We touched on this very briefly, but the whole Jake Tapper Biden book scandal, it's so interesting how many people now have dirt on Biden.
And are coming out saying, I was a personal aide and I had to be careful not to say the wrong thing because I knew that if I told the truth about what was happening behind closed doors, then his political enemies would have weaponized it against him. And you're like...
He would have get Clintoned.
At some point, you're no longer protecting his privacy and you're actually protecting an incompetency.
Well, and it just tells me that you're a coward. Sorry, but if you're that easily swayed by some hurty words, although having said that, you might have been Clinton.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about people that are paid their aides and what have you inside the White House, etc. And privacy, obviously, is a pretty crucial part of that job.
But I do find it interesting how the left are now coming out to grift off their backdoor knowledge about, the presidency.
Jake Tapper trying to claim that he's always been asking these questions when he was the one.
Megyn Kelly gave him an absolute turnout though.
Yeah.
And look, this is the thing. I think again, you Don Lemon's what's his name? Chris Cuomo.
Cuomo, yeah.
He's so close to redeeming himself, but he just will not apologize. And whatever. Yeah. But your Don Lemons, whatever, I think they'll go down with the Titanic.
Yes,
They're just refusing to acknowledge they were wrong.
Yeah, they can't pivot now.
But other than that, we do need to alert you guys. This is breaking news. This is super important, and I need you guys to take this seriously because we've talked about it before, but this time it's actually a thing. There is a new strain of COVID.
Oh, I know. I'm so scared. I lay awake all night last night.
I love this roller coaster.
Oh, I'm terrified. I'm so scared because unlike the last one that we said was super scary, which turned out not to be. And
Remember Omicron?
Yeah, and the one before that we said was super scary and it turned out not to be. And the one before that we said was super scary and it turned out not to be. You've got to really, really believe us this time. This one's super scary.
It's really bad,
It's really so super bad. And you have to ignore the fact that we've been wrong every other time. No, this is literally, we have a new flu and a new cold every single flu season.
Yeah, just morphs.
Right? They morph and they change over time. So apparently this one's led to a spike in hospitalizations in China, including 30 deaths. 30 deaths in a population numbering, what is it, 1.2?
Almost 2 billion.
Yeah, well, okay, whatever it is. In well over 1 billion people.
In a country that's relatively impoverished in most areas.
That is a rounding error.
Yeah.
And given that millions of people, about 8 million people a year die from respiratory diseases worldwide anyway.
Well, again, I bring up this story. I'm pretty sure I've told it on the podcast. But have you ever had the actual flu, like influenza?
I've had things that I've presumed to be the flu.
Oh, no. Wiggly finger.
Sorry.
Dude, I cannot overstate this because I've had the flu twice in my life. I've had influenza A and I've had influenza B, both years apart. I had influenza B in 2022. You cannot say you've had the flu until you've had the flu because, man, it kicks your ass. You think a sniffy nose and a bit of a cough is a flu. The actual flu, you feel like every single bone of yours has been crushed. You feel like literally someone has dug up your corpse from 6 feet after 3 years of decomposition.
I see.
That's what the flu feels like. And until you've had it, and it goes for weeks. And it's not just a cough and a sniffy nose. It's like this body ache and these fevers and this fever dream that you live. You're dehydrated. You're likely to be hospitalized. That's the flu. So when someone says, oh, you're going to get a sore throat and a sniffy nose, I'm like, come at me, bitch. Let's go. No. Because the actual flu is horrendous.
Well, in that case, I probably have had it because I've had the full body sweats, multiple weeks of aches and sweats.
You usually get it once in a blue moon kind of thing. The flu's a real deal. Yeah. And the flu up to 100 years ago used to kill people. Well, it still does now. You know,
respiratory infections and viruses kill over 8 million people a year worldwide.
And they're no joke.
This is why I laugh when they say, the cumulative COVID death toll is now 7 million people or something like that. And it reached 6 million people after 3 years. I'm like, okay, so that's 1/4 of all of the respiratory related deaths.
So remember we cured the flu during
the cold
COVID.
and flu disappeared in Australia. There wasn't a single case. Yeah, I know. Amazing.
Weird. Science works really interestingly, doesn't it?
It's
sort of bends at right angles.
It's funny how the speed of science is very similar to the speed of money.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but notice they run on very similar tracks. But we do need to wind this up.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
You said you were going to read some good comments.
I was going to read some good comments. Okay, let me pull them up. I had them here. Hang on. One moment. Because I'm sick of giving airtime to the shitty comments. Because you're all dicks.
Yeah. Tell us how you really feel, Carly. Come on.
If you can't call people out, then what's the point? What's the point of having this platform if I can't be shouting and point down at people?
That's right.
Let me enjoy my newfound
I'll enjoy my tangent time. You enjoy your rantiness.
Excellent.
And we'll have fun together.
People love my rantiness.
Yeah.
I've been told to embrace it. You told me that.
Carls.
Okay, so here's comment number 1.
Good comments.
I've given up trying and pronounce your usernames. Deus Gomez, whatever. As a Venezuelan living in Australia since 2010, I highly appreciate that you keep talking about the situation in Venezuela and Cuba. We need to inform about this because I can't believe people still like socialism. They don't even believe in my stories or my family's stories, and they still live there. Again, this is the thing. We bring up these stories for a reason, because Australians will be like, that's not true. Yeah. That's not the case. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's not what it says on the internet.
So when I told the story about the old guy that I spoke to in the jazz club in the basement of a building in Caracas City, which I tell regularly because it was a pretty pivotal moment for me, one of the comments on that particular episode was things that didn't happen. And I'm like,
yeah,
sure, you do you, buddy.
I remember telling the story. It was during COVID. I put up my Cuba pictures and I was telling literally my story about my experience there. Yeah. And someone goes, I debunked your story immediately because I went onto Google and it said they have the internet in Cuba. And I'm like, because, the communists don't put out propaganda, but whatever. Yeah. Anyway, back to good comments. Personally, I requested Tangent Time T-shirts because A, alliterations are always awesome, and B, also because, and then T, constant tangents are basically my everyday existence. And what about Carl's ranty pants?
Ranty pants? Ooh.
Someone's like soda pop. I'm like, dude, I've been called soda pop since I was born.
Hang on. A Tangent Time tee and ranty pants. It's a full outfit.
It's a full Oddcast outfit. We're going to have uniforms in no time, and then we'll be making you salute, and then Topher's going to have a harem, and then we're a cult.
I'm liking where this is going. Yeah.
The wake up with spicy Carls could be taken in a very bad way, though. Given how much I talk about OnlyFans. Yes.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And you do also talk about gaping holes quite a lot. I've noticed in this episode. So probably
everything relates back to sex.
Yeah, that's right. Well, no. So everything is about sex except for sex. Sex is about power. So said one of those idiot philosophers.
There you go.
Yeah.
Chris Sheridan said Carly carried this show on half a cold bagel. Champion.
That's
Love
fair.
that.
That's fair. Yeah, you deserve that.
Could you guys please clip the Topher's gap explanation? To which I say that, again, we talk about gaps and crevices and gaping holes. We need a different way of saying that.
So this is really interesting. I hadn't seen that comment, so thank you, whoever wrote that. Because when I finished the Unemployables podcast, they immediately, as soon as the recording stopped, they were like, that thing, that's amazing. We've never heard that before. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I actually need to spend more time developing this into, I don't know, naming it and just giving it a bit more of making it more retail.
Yeah.
More of a retail idea able to be promoted more readily.
Someone was saying like, you need a T-shirt about Venezuela because you tell the story so often. Just be like, read my T-shirt.
That's great.
A lot of people saying they'd love it if we did a live podcast, which is lovely.
Yeah, lovely.
What else we got? Topher, I'm curious behind your reasoning of staying in Australia.
Yeah. It's not necessary to leave Australia yet, and I'm hoping it never will be, but we'll see how that goes. But we've got family here, and we've got a lot of ties here, and I don't want my kids to grow up missing out on those connections. So we can stay, and I'm putting my family in a position where we have the option to get out permanently if that becomes necessary, but I'm going to keep working to try and make sure that never becomes necessary.
I think it's always important to have a plan B.
Yep.
Interesting that Topher doesn't talk much about immigration and multiculturalism. History says you can recover from communism, as we have seen in China and other parts of Asia, but you cannot recover from loss of culture, i.e. multiculturalism.
So multiculturalism and immigration are two entirely separate things. I actually talk quite a lot about immigration and the fact that it's a good thing, but the fact that we need to enforce our laws. And if your culture is reflected in your laws, i.e. women get treated with respect, you don't start machete fights in supermarkets and shopping centres, then your culture, anyone that immigrates to your country will be held accountable to standards that are acceptable to your culture. If your culture is the food you eat and the type of fabric you wear, then I suggest that your culture is nothing more than a veneer. Culture is much deeper than that. It's how we relate to each other. And if we are enforcing our laws equally on everyone, no matter how long ago they arrived, then the fact that they eat different foods is irrelevant, right? So this idea that that I'm supporting multiculturalism because I support immigration, those are two entirely separate things. There are two big failures in what we're doing at the moment. One is we've created perverse incentives so that people immigrate for the wrong reasons. And when they get here, instead of working hard and building a life for themselves, they mooch off the rest of us. And number two, we're not enforcing our laws equally on everybody.
Yeah.
And if we fix those two problems, you remove the perverse incentives and enforce our laws equally, all of the other problems disappear.
Yeah. And last one, because I actually learned something from this. So this is from Milan's. Small correction in the origins of the term 86 Carls. It comes from the mob era in Chicago and refers to someone driving 8 miles out of town and burying them 6 foot deep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd always heard it referred to
8 feet long.
a gang thing, which is 8 feet long, 6 foot deep, and
There
like
you
a
go.
grave. But there you go.
There you go.
You guys teach us things, so thank you.
All right.
On that note,
Has this been our longest? It's got to be close. 2 hours, 50 minutes.
I reckon.
It's got to be close. All right, take us out of here, Carls.
Okay, guys, if you are not already, please follow us on the Oddcast
We are
HQ.
so close to 1,000
Actually,
people. Get us there.
Yeah.
Get us there. Get us there.
Please help me recover some of my outlay.
Investment, yes.
And also, it's now getting to the point where the Oddcast is actually taking up a big chunk of my time, and I'm happy for it to do so, but it is eating into the time of me running my other business. So it does need to become sustainable for me, and at the moment it is not. But you also make the sacrifice of coming to Melbourne once a week.
Sure. And look, we're probably only another 2 months away from being able to start getting sponsors on and other stuff like that. We're working towards
It's growing, but having said that, we are very appreciative of the fact that we are now at episode 21.
21.
Yeah, you weren't even here for episode 20.
Well, but I was there for episode 20. So,
Whatever. But yeah, if you're not already, please follow me at Carlos J. Soda on all platforms and Topher.
At Topher Field on all platforms, especially YouTube. I'm very active there.
And in that, we will see you in the next one. But also leave your comments. Let us know what you want us to talk about.
Yep.
I read them, obviously.
Give us ideas.
And I'm hungry. So can we end?
I am desperate to go to the loo.
Okay.
Can we
we don't need to tell them that.
Can we call this? Can we call it already?
Yeah, we're done. All right, guys.
We're done. All
Bye.
right. Peace out.